Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. All right. Okay. Hey, folks. My bad, my bad. I did not mean to be this minute and a half late, but y'all ain't seen me in 30 days anyway. So, all right. Happy 2026. What else? I haven't seen you guys since December, so it's been a whole lot going on. Let me get a few quick hellos, and then we'll just jump right into a few things. What's up? Let me see. What up, Tyler Hackner, Miss D's, Metro Lady. I should have grabbed my glasses. Praven Schumacher or something 2162. Yeah, I need to grab my glasses. I'll get them in a second. What up, Star Cherry 6814? What up, Poison Ivy? It's Omega, Miss Nika. Shout out to everybody who's hanging with us. So a few things, long story short. Calvin Michaels needed a break. Okay, Calvin Michaels was tired. I realized that when we came out of the shenanigans from the election, I never really got a minute to just like sit back and breathe. And I had to sit and indulge in all of the horrible things going on in the world. And so as I was taking my holiday break from work, I was like, actually, I need a break from YouTube too. And then I think what was even more annoying is that I had already made some pre-recorded videos just for the channel, that I could just post while I was on my lovely vacation. But everything that I made videos on kept getting dated because there were just so many new developments with everything just happening in the world. So I was like, you know what? Let me just wait till I'm back on the live. I don't want to upload something and then the information is so dated that I look crazy. So that's why we didn't get anything for the last 38 days. But thanks for those who did send little check-ins and stuff, making sure I was alive. I'm fine. I did have one relative that did pass away. Life is life. And a few other things that took place. But other than that, I have been well. I have no complaints. Life is lifing, and here we are. Now, like I've said, I think the important thing in this era, as we continue whatever journey we're on, is the two main things I've been talking about since last year. Again, discernment and being in community. Those are going to be the two things that are your saving grace at this moment, especially with everything that's happening. And for me, that's why I was like, I need a little break. I'm going to go be amongst my community and go, travel and visit friends and just have me a grand old time, right? And I needed that just to kind of reset so I can have the energy to ride through whatever shenanigans we're going to talk about for the next year and some change, right? Because every day is something new. Every day is something crazy. And so there's that. One other thing for those who do rock with my music, we talked about this back in 2019 when I had my second album, the hardcover. DC has their own kind of music awards ceremony, like their own Grammys. It's called like the Washington Area Music Awards, aka the Whammies, right? And so I'm eligible for nominations in 4 categories. And so I'm eligible for the finalist round to be nominated. So if you would like to support and vote for my projects, if you like them, I put a link in the description. I'm eligible for Best Pop Album with Before Tomorrow. I'm eligible for Best R&B Album with After Yesterday, Best Pop Song with I Want, and Best Music Video with I Want as well. And so that's pretty cool. So voting, from what I understand, goes until January 15th. I probably should have told y'all 20 days ago when I first got the notification, but I ain't been here. So yeah, if you would like to vote and support that, the link is in the description. When you click the link, you go straight to the Calvin Michaels tab, but it will make you make an account. It's just, you do it through your Facebook or something, and then you just scroll to the bottom and click the votes for whatever you want to like, or also check out the other artists that are also being nominated. DMV, people sleep on DC, but DC has a really nice music scene as far as independent artists. And as you know, if you follow me, I self-produce all of my work. I'm a team of one when it comes to the music. Minus the mastering, there's a guy, Randy, that does the mastering. But other than that, I write every song, play every note, sing every note, do it all. Anyway, there's that. Zoom party. Shout out to Sarah and Avocado Queen, because those are the main two that keep reminding me about it. I am going to schedule a Zoom party for February 9th, right? That's just us chopping it up. We're not talking politics. And I mean, we can have them conversations. I don't really want to, though. I want to just kind of hang out, laugh, play games, do all that fun stuff. So Monday, February 9th is going to be the Zoom party for this channel. And it'll be just like how we do the book club. I will have the link posted. All you got to do is click it, chop it up, hang. I do want to shout out one subscriber, but I left the book in the other room. So give me 1 sec. Let me go grab that. And all right, I'm back. Okay. So they have been very patient with me as I trying to do like a million projects. But one of our subscribers, Orlando Taylor, has this book entitled Black Music, Politics, and World Bombs. I'm actually going to pull it up on the screen as well if I can find where I put it. 1 second. Because see, I'll tell you the reasoning why I'm using this versus my physical version of the book. So let me share my screen really quick just to highlight this book. Oh wait, I don't need that. I said share the screen. I said share the screen. Thank you. All right. Anyway, this is the book. We're still beefing with Amazon, so we're gonna go to Barnes and Noble. It ain't that much better, but yeah. So, Black Music, Politics, and Word Bombs. That is the book, right? And by the way, look at the price right now. That's the e-version. If you want the ebook, now you want the physical, it's gonna be a little bit more, but it's really not overly expensive. It's a really good price. I have the physical, but see, the problem is me and the UPS man have beef because when they brought my book, they left it outside in the rain, and I had to let the book dry. Like I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's like waterlogged. But what's kind of dope about this book is it's a book of poetry. And you can tell that it's been written over like a good span of time because all the different poems are reflective about different experiences. But the coolest thing is in the book on every page is this QR code. My book looks terrible. That's why I want you guys to look at the Barnes and Noble one. But all right, every poem, there is a QR code that links you to a song that fits the mood of the poem, which I thought was really, really dope. And again, especially for like Black men who just sometimes feel like maybe we're limited with the expressions that we're allowed to have because society puts us in this bubble and we're supposed to perform or expect ourselves to all move in a certain way, or we're deemed as not masculine enough or all that other crap. I think this book does a great job of just allowing us to be expressive, right? Allowing us to just exist as is. So shout out to you, Orlando. And that's not his only product, but this is the one he's been pushing. So definitely check that out. Okay, I think that's all my announcements. So let's get to some stuff. This is all my notes today. We got a lot, by the way, so we're gonna try and get through all this. I don't know what's going on with this lighting. I'm a little washed out, but whatever. So let's go ahead and start with Renee Good. Now we have. I didn't even check. Is my sound good? I'm sorry. I feel like y'all can hear me. Okay, good. So Minneapolis, Renee Brown. We've seen the story. We've seen the backstory. There's a video that has gone viral. It's this white woman and her friends. They're somewhat having, a discussion with ICE, right? And then in the clip, I'm not going to play the clip today because I'm trying to not oversaturate you guys with a lot of trauma, especially because the lady dies in the video. But in the video, if you haven't seen it, there's a situation where you see her vehicle somewhat blocking the road, and you see the ICE people kind of doing their thing. You see another ICE agent run up to the window. You see her kind of drive to turn away from the ICE agent. And next thing you know, you hear pop, 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 right? They shoot the lady in the face 3 times and she dies. And so with that being said, then you start to get the outrage. Now, mind you, this is a week and some change ago. We're just now talking about it. I'm a few days after the fact because I ain't been here. But with that being said, we see the video. The video goes viral. Of course, White House and all of the Trump team and all of them, they like to give us a different narrative. And somehow the story goes from what everybody saw to this woman was trying to kill the ICE agent and tried to run him over, and the ICE agent feared for his life, and the ICE agent was in the hospital, and thank God he survived, right? So that was the narrative that was put out there, right? Kind of that same pattern we always get when there's somebody that is killed by the police, especially when they're unarmed. They do the fear for their life. And you gotta just flip the narrative. They normally do that with Black folks. They don't normally do this with white folks because white folks normally don't get this kind of traction when they get killed by the police because, like I've said a million times before, white folks don't move as a community until it's time to usually be racist. So a lot of times when their own gets killed, nobody says anything. They just keep it moving and then look at us crazy because we feel some kind of way when it happens in our community. But staying to the point, right? And so what's very interesting is in addition to that, then they release, what is the body cam footage from the ICE agent. And what I found so interesting is I think they thought this was going to help ICE and paint Renee to be a horrible person. And in reality, it did the polar opposite, right? Because in the video, the last thing you hear her say is, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." And then that's when you see her trying to pull off, right? And then it's not funny, but then when you hear the last words of what the ICE agent says after he's just killed this woman at point blank range, who was unarmed, who again has her own 6-year-old that she was just dropping off and has, the deceased father of her child. He calls her the F and B word. I said, okay, all right, interesting. So now we're here, and you we're getting the public backlash, you're getting the protests, and there's a whole lot going on here, right? Now I'm going to be the person who might have to shake the table a little bit, and I'm going to say this before I get on my soapbox, because we're about to be here for a minute. One, what should have happened to her should have never happened. Nobody should have shot her in the face at point blank range 3 times. She was not a threat to anybody, and the idea of trying to paint the narrative of she was trying to run over the officer, that's debunked the minute you see the video. In addition to that, again, these are ICE agents, immigration enforcement. These are not everyday police. These are not, so there's so much to be said. And so, yeah, what happened was some nonsense. That was, again, an overreaction. And in addition to that, then you shoot the girl 3 times. It ain't like you shot her once and then fell back. No, you did a pop, 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 right? So with all that being said, some of y'all ain't gonna like me after this point. Remember how I've always said, when you keep giving an inch to nonsense, they will run a marathon on you, right? And I've been saying that on this channel for years. When you keep giving an inch to nonsense, they will run a marathon on you. And so when it comes to this conversation of police brutality, in my opinion, what we saw with Renee Barnes is the end result of what I like to call white collective silence. Because for years, especially on this channel, we have sat here and talked about police brutality and how we were becoming a police state and all the things that were happening to Black victims of police violence. And for years, we were met. I'm saying we, because even though this is my channel, I feel like this is a community of folks. Some of you guys have been with me since I was still in my early 20s. Now we're getting closer to 40, right? But when I tell you, you can go on any video, and it's not just mine, but I'm gonna stick with my channel for a quick second. Whether it was Terrence Crutcher or Philando Castile or Walter Scott or Sandra Bland or Tatiana Jefferson or Breonna Taylor, Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, so on and so forth. In every video, when we spent the time saying, hey, this is what's happening in the country, this is going to be a problem if we don't nip it in the bud, because this is something that is structural, that is affecting people, we got met with so much pushback. We got called every name in the book. Everybody wanted to gaslight us. Everybody said, oh, you're doing the most. Or what about the black on black crime? And then even some in our own community, well, how do we expect them to respect us if we don't respect ourselves? Like, everything under the sun you could think of, somebody had something to say. And so every time it was a Black body, everybody was fine with it. And it was the same people who would go out and argue and fight and march. But again, we were always met with collective resistance from white America. Is it everybody in white America? No. But collectively, white America has been on the same page when it comes to these kind of things, right? So we've always been there. And so, we were met with the all lives matter, right? Every time we talked about whatever's happening, all lives matter, all lives matter. Or they'll tell you terms like, oh, there's that victimhood mentality. And one of the things I've always hated about the term victimhood is that when you use the term victimhood against somebody who's been on the receiving end of a structural issue, what you have done is you've taken away the conversation of it being an issue on a macro scale, and you've made it something that is the responsibility of the individual. And so calling out police brutality, calling out what has been happening in the United States for decades, was not something that was on the fault of an individual person who's no longer living because they were shot unarmed. That's a structural issue that exists. But white America always fought us on that and said, no, victimhood mentality, y'all are just, you want to find every excuse in the book to be bad about something. You want to find every excuse in the book to not take accountability. And so, these people would unfortunately be killed. And what does everybody do? They go and dig up the person's background. Oh, well, in 4th grade, he cheated on the multiplication test. And that's why, we got to see all the facts before we see whatever's happening, right? And so it was all the all lives matter demographic and everything else like that. And so this has always been a country that has been rooted in injustice, especially when it comes to Black folks. And stay with me, because this is going to go somewhere, because some of y'all are probably side-eyeing me right now, like, how dare you? But again, bigger conversation, bigger picture. Like I said, the United States has always been rooted in injustice, especially when it came to Black folks. Now it's getting into a space where other folks are becoming collateral. But I want to go a little bit deeper, because I always got a lesson ready. So we're going to take a journey really quick, right? Let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Now, this is John Sharp Williams, and this is in 1921. Now, John Sharp he had a sharecropping plantation, right? So he had this sharecropping plantation, had a whole lot of folks on there. He was abusing all the people on the plantation. Remember, sharecropping is after slavery. Slavery is now illegal, right? So even the people that are working on these sharecropping fields, there's still some element of a standard that those who own the sharecropping fields have to abide by. They just can't treat these people terribly because now these are now citizens. These people are no longer enslaved, and it's also 1921. There's an investigation, and it's discovered that, okay, all the people on this plantation are being treated horribly. They're emancipated. They're not being fed. They're not allowed to leave, so on and so forth. He ends up killing 11 of the sharecroppers. These are black folks, right? And it was so bad, he had some of them dig their own graves. In addition to that, some of them were chained down with weights and put down at the bottom of the river, right? And so I say all that to say, he becomes the first white man since 1877 to be convicted for killing a black person. 44 years go by where white Americans could do whatever they wanted to black folks to no consequence. 1877 to 1921. And again, mind you, this was also a death penalty case. Now, I'm somebody who's not for the death penalty, but for the sake of this conversation, this was initially a death penalty case. The jury couldn't see themselves giving this man execution for killing all these black folks. So no, he was given life, right? And so again, that was the first degree murder conviction since 1877 for a white person that has killed a black person. And then we wouldn't see this happen again until 1966. Let's go to the next slide, shall we? All right, let's try this again. Now, this next person, ladies and gentlemen, now this one here, this was Hubert Strange, right? Now, he was convicted of killing Willie Brewster in 1965, going into 66. So again, we had that window from 1877 to 1921 where all kind of black folks were being targeted and killed and lynched and burned and stabbed and buried and everything under the sun by white Americans. Nobody has to go to jail. Nobody has to do anything. Stay with me. This is going somewhere, I promise, right? And so we get a 44-year window where nobody has to face any accountability when it comes to terrorizing black people. Then in 1966, we finally get another example where somebody is finally convicted. Now with him, he never had to go to jail, right? So he's convicted of killing Willie Brewster, but he never goes to jail. So when you do the math, technically, we pretty much went 95 straight years without a whole lot of convictions when it comes to black folks and injustice. And we talked about the state of Florida before too. When we talk about that time period from 1989 going into 2016, where you had over 600 police shootings and not a single conviction from 1989 to 2016 in the state of Florida, right? And so I'm saying all that to say is that when you have something like that, as far as a pattern, it creates what you call an embedded ideology of the country where people become comfortable with certain things happening to specific groups, right? It becomes embedded in the mindset of the following generations that it's normal to brutalize black people and nothing happens. It is what it is. And so nobody ever takes the issue seriously. And when you have that taking place, you can create a police state because people are never checking the police or any of the agencies in association with the police because they feel that everything that happens to us is something that we deserve, right? And so with that being said, with the mindset of how white America saw the police, it also shifted into the idea of what you call absolute and indisputable vindication when it comes to white folks just killing us in general, right? And so even when it's not police oriented, you get the same pattern. That's what we got with Trayvon Martin. That's what we got with Jordan Davis. And so the narrative becomes we always deserve whatever has happened to us. It's always on our fault, or it's always on us, or again, let's gather all the facts before we respond. And that goes back to that idea of, again, white people have always seen themselves as an extension of the police to begin with. And so even when it's not the police that are killing us, but it's the white vigilante, that's also seen in the same conversation as the police. And there's some element of justification as to why it happened. And so when you look at just the pattern we continue to see, look at how the world responded with Breonna Taylor. It was all her fault. They wanted to latch on to who she was in a relationship with. They were saying that an ex that she was no longer even with is the reason why she's dead. And you had all these people justify her in her bed sleep and say, well, there was something she must have done to deserve it. When the police did a no-knock warrant, I'm not about to go down the Breonna Taylor story because we talked about it so many times. I'm tired of talking about it, but it still needs to be a story that's told. So please check out my Breonna Taylor related videos. But with that being said, there has always been pushback where anytime black people collectively try to challenge the status quo or make a shift with regard to what was happening when it comes to policing, white America always fought back. White America always resisted. And even when it got down to the point of just having a conversation, they didn't want to have it. Let's go to exhibit number 3, shall we? Who remembers this night? All right. This was the VMAs. Jamie Foxx, of all people, right? Jamie be playing in that snow on occasion. But Jamie decides to wear a Trayvon Martin shirt at the VMAs. What happens? Oh, this is BET Awards. My bad. I saw the star. What ends up happening? So Jamie Foxx is at the Black People Awards show talking to Black people about some Black people stuff. And guess who gets mad? Guess who gets outraged? White America. He goes viral. And when you look at the conversations that were being had on what used to be Twitter, I still call it Twitter. His mama named him Twitter. I'm always call it Twitter. You saw all these conversations about Trayvon Martin was a thug and he deserved what he got. And how dare Jamie Foxx racialize this incident? And this is why we can never get past racism because Black people keep bringing it up, so on and so forth and so on. And they just kept going. And we watched the media kind of sensationalize this. You had all the different panel discussions where everybody, you put 3 or 4 people who are pro George Zimmerman on one side, one person to speak on behalf of Trayvon Martin and the entire family and everybody else, and it's 4-on-1. And of course, you got 4 people pounding on one person. The one person is going to get emotional because it's frustrating. Because again, in addition to the fact that Trayvon Martin may not be their relative or anything, Black people still move in community even when we don't want to, because we understand that even though we are not a monolith and we all have our own experiences, we still live under the umbrella of anti-Blackness. So when something happens to one of us, it can indirectly affect all of us. And so now you got the Black person being overly emotional, and now they're saying, see, they're just erratic people, they're violent. That's the narrative that they always did. But then it gets worse. Then Trayvon Martin is the anomaly because, oh my God, there's going to be some charges for somebody like a George Zimmerman. And then what does America do? As the witnesses come into play, remembers this. Remember Rachel? The media gave Rachel hell on earth, not because she did anything wrong. They didn't like her accent. They didn't like that she couldn't articulate in a way that was digestible. They didn't even like the way she looked. They didn't like the fact that she thought she was only coming to the trial for one day. And when that attorney or that was doing the cross-examination said, oh, you got to come back again. And she's like, I got to go to work, right? Oh, they thought she was difficult. And somehow people felt like, well, this justifies why Trayvon is no longer here because this is just how these people move. Everything that we do is to our own detriment, even when we're just being perfectly human, right? And so we kept getting that. And so as I kept stating, and other people with the same platforms kept saying, we are in a police state. We are in a space where things are starting to happen to folks and everybody's just perfectly fine with it. And the pushback that you would get is, well, stop doing crime. Stop committing. Why didn't Trayvon Martin stop and talk to George Zimmerman? You raised us to not talk to strangers. Now when we don't want to talk to them, we got to die, right? That's the reality. And so this continues for years and years and years. But then there's an anomaly. We get to 2020. George Floyd takes place. The whole world is watching. It's so bad, you start getting protests everywhere, not even just in the United States. There's protests in Australia and Europe and parts of Africa and South America and Central America and parts of Asia and in Canada, all kind of places where even the world is like, United States, can y'all get it together over there? Y'all, every day. We like to watch what you guys are doing for your pop culture influence, but dang, every time we look at y'all now, y'all killing somebody, right? And so there's this massive wave of an uprising. Now, at the same time, one of the things that I also brought up was I feel like things are getting a little performative in 2020. We started to get a little overabundance of symbolism, right? I kept saying, please be careful with the symbolism, because in 2020, there was an opportunity to shift things. There was an opportunity where, again, we finally had, and when I say we, I mean anybody who was passionate about what was happening and wanted to implement that change. There was finally an opportunity where there was a possibility for the tide to change because there was enough attention. There was enough outrage. There was enough fear. You started watching companies start making pledges. I'm giving 100 million to this and 20 million to this and diversity, equity, inclusion, and community outreach. And we're going to build a community center. We're going to do the food banks and all this stuff. Everybody got nervous, right? And when it came to a lot of the protests, people were out there for the right reasons, but there were also a lot of people who latched onto it because it was the cool thing to do. It was the trend. People were spending more time on the slogan, but not the motion, right? And so with that opportunity, as these companies made the pledges and everything, and then officers started taking a knee, you started watching the tide shift. Now these protests are becoming celebrations, right? People bringing out the grills. We got, remember the clip with the dude that was crumping in front of the cop with the girlfriend on the side? You got that going. We had people ripping the runway and everything. It was everything but what it was supposed to be at that point, because now it was the cool thing to do. I saw a million electric slides and Cupid shuffles. It was killing me, right? You had all that going. And so as we started, not we, but as society started shifting into the symbolism nuggets and feeling like mission accomplished, we watched the momentum fall apart, right? Also with the shenanigans with where all the money went to, that's another conversation, right? And so with all that being said, when you look at how 2020 went down, people lost their fire because nobody wanted to get uncomfortable. People wanted to do what you called comfortable protesting, right? People didn't even have the message correct with what it is that we were fighting against. And so as you saw the pendulum start shifting back, especially as we got closer to the 2020 election, right? When it got to the conversation of policing, we started having the conversations of, well, we need police reform, right? Y'all are giving the police all this money to do all these different things. Why don't we put money into, social workers that can come out when somebody's having a manic episode, as opposed to showing up with the SWAT team and just spraying everybody? Why don't we start giving these additional services? Why don't the cities also take a look at the resources that are needed in neighborhoods where there is high crime and say, maybe if we plant these seeds of opportunity and resources, this might somewhat shift what's happening. And somehow that narrative, it kind of shifted into what you call the defund the police. Media took that and ran with it. And then it became nobody wants the police anymore. And they want this to be a free for all. Just anybody does anything that they want. And that scared the hell out of white America, right? And then as we came into the 2020 election season, a lot of candidates ran on the idea of people want to get rid of the police so that they can continue to do crime. Can we go to another example? Because I'm sure many of you remember this commercial. All right, let me get this one going. All right. All right, kids, let's play.
Violent crime is surging in Louisiana. Woke leaders blame the police. I blame the criminals. A mom should not have to look over her shoulder when she's pumping gas. I voted against the early release of violent criminals, and I opposed defunding the police. Look, if you hate cops just because they're cops, the next time you get in trouble, call a crackhead. I'm John County, and I approve this message.
He won his election, by the way. I'm not gonna lie, I used to laugh when that commercial came on. Because what? Fix it, Lord. Okay, anyway. Getting back to my point. And so, with that being said, as we started seeing the shift, right? You start seeing the shift. Everybody wants to disassociate from the idea of holding the police accountable, because now you're seen as somebody who's 100% get rid of the police and let everybody just go and stab and kill each other. And like he said, hey, if you got a problem with the police because they're cops, call a crackhead. And you know exactly who that's coded for. When I don't know why they try to paint that on us when we've already done the research and it shows that 2/3 of crack users are white. All right. It wasn't even us like that, but whatever. They made us the face of it. And so at the same time, you notice the media slowed how much they would start covering a lot of these police brutality killings. Especially, I feel like there was two waves, right? After Mike Brown in 2016, the media really pulled back with the coverage of a lot of these unarmed police shootings because there were so many. And so they pulled back a little bit. But then George Floyd happens, it comes back into the media spotlight. But you notice, somebody please name, because there's been many, but when you think about it, since 2020, there hasn't really been a police shooting that has gained national traction like anything before 2020. I don't think there's anything that's happened since 2020 that sits in that same conversation of a George Floyd or Mike Brown or Philando Castile or Terrence Crutcher or Sandra. None of them, because the media stopped telling the stories. They started watering it down. It became a smaller item to talk about. And that was because the fear of people didn't want another 2020 happening. 2020 was the opportunity to shift things. And then we saw the companies roll back on those promises they had. Well, yeah, we were going to give you $200 million, but, we changed our mind. We noticed that whole black thing, y'all. We moved on, right? Everybody moved on. Everybody's good, right? And so you started watching everything shift. And so at the same time, the killings never stopped. As a matter of fact, the killings actually increased. And so I want to show this diagram here. From 2019 to 2024, we saw the increase in police killings. Look at this. 1116, 1160, 1190, 1269, 1358, 1375. Now it says 643 for 2025, but that's because they stopped counting in June. Because I know there's going to be some smart aleck on here like, no, see, Trump is bringing the crime down. No, he's not. All right. And so the numbers never changed. And since 2013, there's always been at least 1,000 police killings in the United States. Right. And this is not because crime has increased. We've already seen the crime numbers, and it's shown that crime has been going down since the 70s. There's been two waves of the crime drop. It dropped going out of the 70s, dropped up coming out of the 90s into the 2000s. And so we've been there, right? And so I say all that to say, it became normalized for the police to continue to shoot and kill folks. Everybody, there's so many people who are perfectly fine with the idea of police just killing folks, right? It's just normal because, again, you can get enough people to buy into whatever that mindset is and that idea of collective thought or what is collectively understood. And for a lot of people, depending on which side of the argument you stand on, there are some who feel that it's totally justified for the police to do whatever they want to when they need to go and take out other folks. But then there's other people who are like, how is this normal? You mean to tell me some guy goes to an academy for a handful of weeks and now they get to kill people? That's where we're at. So getting to that. At the same time, as we're still in the era of what I call bare minimum 2020, it was more so Instagram posts and everybody going viral. We saw an increase in what you call anti-rioting laws. We saw an increase. Is that my roll down? Sorry. Okay. We saw an increase in anti-rioting laws. We still had a failure of what you call a centralized police database, where, again, because there's no national database of police that make these offenses, if you go and you work in, I don't know, Charleston, South Carolina as a police officer and kill somebody, you can go work at a, police station in Dallas, and the people in Dallas have no idea that you killed somebody over in South Carolina, and you still get a badge. You can just jump from state to state to state. A lot of these officers who got acquitted or didn't have to do a lot of time for killing a lot of the folks that we've always talked about, a lot of them are still serving. I just saw that the officer that killed Tamir Rice years ago finally just lost his job, right? That was 2012. He went and killed a 12-year-old, and boom, for the next 13 years, he was still working in law enforcement, right? And so we end up getting there. And so you see that, again, America decides to reelect Orange Man, who already ran on the guise of qualified immunity for police. And, we've upgraded the military-style equipment when it comes to policing and everything else like that. Policing powers were expanded even more. And we even saw it in 2020, where you started seeing the police do things that were a little bit unconventional with what we've seen in the past, where you watched protesters get clocked in the face on live TV. You watched news anchors get assaulted by the police or get arrested. We saw people getting hit in the face with tear gas. Everything under the sun you could think of was happening in 2020. And again, too many people were distracted by the symbolism or the fact that, oh my God, this is so cool. Everybody's outside tonight. We're all going to put on our black and we're just going to go out there. People spent more time working on their signs and their chants, and this is what democracy looks like. And then everybody goes home, right? And so we had that going. All right. And so you continue to watch the limit get pushed over what it was that you deem the threshold of what people will accept from the police or from, those in charge. And the line just kept getting pushed further and further and further, where we watched the policing powers gain more, expansion into what it was that they were allowed to do without pushback, to the point where things that are normalized in 2026 would be outrageous in 2010, would be outrageous. But right now, this crap is normal, right? This is normal. And so the other piece that I want to get to, where am I going with this? Oh, now let me get to Renee. What's interesting with Renee's situation is you're starting to see this conversation where people are like, oh my God, how can they do this? There's something must be done. And it's like, have y'all been paying attention? Right? In the same way where y'all kept asking, how come you're not seeing black folks outside really protesting? Black folks had already said, well, listen, once Crazy Man got back in there a second time and we saw the kind of expansions that police had with the kind of power that they have, black folks aren't fool enough to go out there and get shot in the face. Black folks been in the house for various reasons, right? And so the thing that I don't get is people are trying to say like, oh my God, well, what happened with her is an anomaly. Like, she was unarmed. She was afraid, because some are saying, well, if you point a gun in somebody's face, yeah, they're going to drive off, because I probably do the same thing too. And actually, as somebody who had the gun pointed in their face by the police, the saving grace was that I was already pulled over. I just looked to the window and was met with the gun. But the part that I always say to that is, again, did we forget Philando Castile? He was in his seatbelt in the car with his 4-year-old and his wife. And he informed the officer that, I just want you to know I do have a weapon on me. I'm not going to do anything with it, but I just want you to know before you search me. And what happens? He gets shot in front of his family. And they don't even administer aid. He goes on to glory. And so my question becomes, have y'all not been paying attention, or did you just not care until it landed at your doorstep? Because that's the real conversation. And the thing that's crazy to me, because, you also see they're doing the same pattern. They're trying to dig up whatever they can dig up on Renee. But the other thing is that, in my opinion, white folks still ain't mad enough. They're not. Even those who are outside protesting now, these are the same folks that was outside in 2020. Those are the usuals. Those are the ones here. They'll sit and block the street, and they're gonna work on them signs. They're gonna get some new songs. A few of them might throw a brick or two, but in general, white America is unfazed. And part of it is because when you look at what it is that is in the context of why Renee was shot, right? This is in relation to what's happening with ICE. And because we now have another boogeyman, which is now the immigrant population, a lot of white Americans like, okay, well, she has to be collateral to, what happened. And what's even crazier, for a lot of white America, they would rather lose something than run the risk of losing what they think is America. Think back to, because also I'll say what's also interesting is even you're seeing the comparisons to Ashley Babbitt, who died during January 6th, right? That was the white woman who stormed and breached the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, federal building, right? Anybody with common sense would know to never in their mind, right? And as she's literally staring down the barrel of a gun when they tell her do not move while she has her backpack, she decided to be G.I. Jane and still try to barge through. I don't know where she thought she was going or what she thought was going to happen when she made it down into the hallway, because I don't know exactly what was supposed to happen next. But unfortunately, she became collateral to that bullet. But they somehow want to equate Renee and Ashley Babbitt. And I'm like, no, they're not the same. And then Ashley Babbitt's family got what, $16 million or something like that. But anyway, going back, they're trying to paint the idea that, oh, Renee is this violent person, so on and so forth. And the point that I want to make is whether or not, even if she spit in the officer's face, which he did not, right? That still does not warrant the idea of somebody being shot in the face 3 times. And this is one of the reasons why, even when I started seeing the No Kings marches, I didn't even pay any attention, because I'm like, y'all are unserious. Y'all are still, it's all fun for y'all. Like, this is the trendy thing to do. And this is how I know y'all are unserious. Why were all the No Kings marches on a Saturday? If you're trying to shake the table, how are you going to have a comfortable protest? Well, let's do it on Saturday because, everybody's off, like the dog, we can bring the dogs and, the kids can stay at the babysitter and, it can be just a nice afternoon. And then afterwards, we can maybe get some brunch and stuff like that. Yeah. It's going to be a nice sunny day. And I think afterwards, the kids have soccer practice. Kids have soccer practice, of course. Right. And so y'all have this very symbolic march on Saturdays. And it's like the people that y'all are mad at are not even in the offices. I did a video on this way back in 2014 about my thoughts on marching and why I felt like a lot of people were missing the plot. But again, that's why I didn't even entertain a No Kings protest. And I'm like, for those who did it, great, lovely. But to me, that was a continuation of what we were getting in 2020 once people started buying the symbolism nuggets. Again, people spent more time on their signs and their slogans and making sure they had the right lighting for the Instagram post. And when you get the selfie with me, my 30 friends, and hey, guys, hey, yeah, we're at the protest, guys, yeah, all right. And then they want to post it because, again, everybody also wants their face in a history book. Everybody wants to be a piece of history without doing the work, right? And so, again, everything is all comfortable. My question is, what was the action plan? If you're going to be able to get all these people together, what was next? It was never really locked in. And so you didn't make it make sense, right? And so going back to what I said when I said that line about, the reason why I feel like a lot of white America is perfectly fine with what happened to Renee, because they would rather feel like, they'd rather lose a few little civil rights if it means that they're not going to lose the country, or if it means that somebody else can still stay beneath them. That's the point that I'm talking about. Like, think back to all those videos where we kept hearing people say, you're losing the country. You're the reason we're losing the country. Every single time, a white person spoke out against somebody who did something racist at a convenience store or at the mall or at the gas station. And, they called out the bigot for using the N-word or doing something out of pocket. And then every single time there's always that white person, you're the reason we're losing the country. You're the reason we're going to lose the country. Like, understand, these people have been on code since forever and a day. And so the thing is, there's a lot of people in white America who totally disagree with what's happening with ICE, but they don't disagree with maintaining that fraternal order that exists. And that's why they will kind of stay silent, because they recognize that indirectly they still benefit to an extent from some of this if they have the complexion for the protection, right? And so at the same time, that benefit that they get to enjoy is the benefit of knowing that there's going to always be black folks. And now this population is now learning it as well. The brown populations who are going to always have their rights infringed upon. And it's the idea of keeping us in our place, right? And so one of the things that I've seen is that with this Renee situation, white America is kind of divided, and you don't, like I said, they don't really see this as a super problem, because to them, this is how things are supposed to go. It goes back to my question of, for those who used to combat us and say all lives matter, this is the time for y'all to get active. This is one of the all lives. This is one of the all lives right here. This is when y'all are supposed to get out there and kick some trash cans down, because y'all fought us so hard for just a slogan, right? And even if you weren't even a part of that specific movement, but you still spoke out against police brutality, you still got whacked with the all lives matter. I was getting all lives matter comments on every video. I'm like, every time, right? And it also makes me question even the Second Amendment disciples. The Second Amendment disciples who spend all this time about, yeah, well, we need the Second Amendment and we need this because if the government ever tries to bring about tyranny or tries to take over, that's when we're going to step out in the militias. We're going to protect the American freedoms. Where y'all at? Y'all been real quiet. Renee would definitely be one of y'all wives. So I'm like, this was your opportunity. Go on and show us how that Second Amendment, well, not us, show them because y'all do enough stuff to us. Go on and show everybody how that Second Amendment works since you're so gung-ho about it. You show up to town halls with AR-15s, and any other time, y'all want to spray and blow up everything. You want to spray schools and churches and mosques and grocery stores and movie theaters and the mall and the gas station and the car wash and the pool and the golf course, the zoo. Any place, every time I turn around, y'all spraying up some stuff. Now, when your government is actually whacking y'all and infringing upon your rights, you got nothing to say because, again, the idea is, well, yeah, it's kind of happening to some of us, but it's better because it's happening to all of them. So everybody's silent. I'm like, I see through the BS, see right through it. And so, my God. I think it's also it has to do with the fact that white America understands that what's happening with ICE, they know that they're not really on the receiving end of this. They know that ICE is the people that are being sought out are not them. It's everybody who has either some brown and even black, complexion. Those are the people ICE is going after. That's why you're not seeing a whole lot of pushback, right? They keeping it real cute. So, the reality is white America has to fix this one. Black people, we already didn't have the protections to begin with, but now we have even less. So the idea of thinking we're supposed to run out there and fight, and kudos to those who go out there, but understand these conversations of where are the black folks? You should have listened to us this whole time. Been telling y'all for the last 200 years, but y'all want to gaslight us and paint us to be crazy. Now this stuff is finally landing on your doorstep. And you're mad because we're outraged, but we got to take care of our own at the moment because we can't even trust y'all because y'all can't even do what you said you was going to do in November. And anyway, with that being said, I want to go back to another example as to why Black folks also have to be careful. Now, this is somewhat of a graphic image. I'm not going to show the video that I wanted to show. I'm trying to not give y'all trauma. But again, because when Black folks show up to support, and this is just the other day. This is an ICE agent, by the way. Again, you can see the fear in this man's eyes. And what do you think happened next? Anybody want to take a guess? Out there in solidarity, boom, shoot him right in the face, right? It's always going to be us as collateral. So this idea of us always trying to be everybody's hero, this is why I understand when Black folks be like, we're not your mule, because even when we can do the most law-abiding everything, we can be the ones to even try to be as peaceful as possible, but we're always the first ones they're going to go after every single time. And the reality is, if they can shoot Renee in the face with real bullets, what you think they're going to do to us? This is what I call, I hate to say this, but he's lucky, right? That is the reality. He is a lucky man. Thank God that, he was able to walk away from it. But again, this is what I'm talking about. And so the other thing is we're not going to keep risking our lives and our bodies while y'all keep actively slowing the progress, right? And so when folks keep saying this stuff like, but it's different because she was minding her business. So was Botham Jean. He was literally in his living room eating some ice cream. Here comes Amber Geiger in the wrong apartment drunk and gonna shoot a man on his couch because somehow she can't even identify her own living room and thinks she's in danger, and people still rally behind her. And then she only gets 10 years on top of that and has the nerve. And again, this is that performativeness that we have, where you had the black judge who wanted to give her the Bible. You had Botham Jean's brother who wanted to give her a hug, even though I did think that was going to be his moment, but no, he didn't do it. He wanted to give her a hug. The bailiff was brushing her hair. I was like, y'all, these forgiveness Olympics and theatrics are getting us nowhere. Like, what is wrong with y'all? Damn. Shit. So anyway, I say all that to say, all right? My God. But anyway, like I was saying, so again, this idea of we can't keep putting our bodies on the line while you guys be out here slowing the progress. Here's another example of progress being slow. And God, I feel like I should have just made this video the whole live because I could talk about this all day. All right, I want y'all to watch and listen to what happens in this video, please. And this is the prime example of what I'm talking about.
You've been reading with crayons. No. Listen.
I know you.
I would let you. You could help me. I would embrace it if you would help me.
I will come over.
I can't move that way.
I do.
So,
You know my heart. You know what I mean?
take off all that shit. Come with me. I gotta say that. I do.
Okay. So again, this is why I say I don't have time. Y'all out here playing, right? The idea of, again, oh well, let's do this thing where we give hugs. See, the difference is for us when it comes to living in this police state. Now, I want to say in that video, just if in case you couldn't understand what was happening, the ICE officer and the lady are having a conversation, and they're having a conversation about giving each other a hug. Right. And she's, you can give me a hug. Take all that stuff. Give me a hug. Give me a hug. So the point that I want to make is when you're talking about living in a police state, especially as a Black person, for us, this is our livelihood. For white folks, this is the cool trend to talk about because they want to look like good people in the long run. When you go into history books 30, 40 years from now, they want to be seen as one of the good ones. But the problem is they don't understand how this conversation goes. And every single time they do these little symbolism nuggets or do these tokens of love, what you're doing is you're still enabling the system to do exactly what it's supposed to do, because there's always going to be individuals who think that if they do an individual good deed, it's going to somehow shift the system or dip into the moral complex of those doing the offenses, and that will fix the problem. All we need is love, right? We are past that. That's not how this works. Remember that time I told you I was at I haven't done a protest since like 2016. I was done after that. And the reason why was, right, it was one of the Mike, I want to say it was a Mike Brown, either it was Mike Brown or Walter Scott. It was one of them, right? At the protest, everybody's going, everybody's in the zone. Here comes this older white woman, probably in her, I'm going to, some of them age differently, so she might have been 50, but I'm going to guess she was like in her 70s, right? And so we're standing out there. She comes up. First of all, I don't like people touching me without my permission, but she grabs my hands. And I'm like, I'm like, Self, just be nice. Just be nice for now. And she goes, "You're my brother." And then she says it again, "You're my brother." And I'm sitting there like, this is very nice, but this isn't needed. Like, because at the end of the day, the burden is not on me to be forgiving to my oppressor. The burden is for you to get active and get your folks to stop oppressing everybody. Then we can have, well, we're still not going to have that conversation, but then I could almost entertain the conversation of brotherhood and sisterhood. Like, you got to be kidding me with that. And so, again, we keep seeing the same pattern. We've seen this before with that lady giving hug. Like, all right, I got two additional examples I want to show. All right. Y'all know I get triggered every time I tell this story, but we remember this image, right? We remember this. Oh, we remember this, right? This was one of the ones. Again, that love. You just need love, right? This picture goes viral. Everybody's mad before this picture goes viral about what's happening in the world, right? We're talking about police brutality. And then they love to throw these kind of images in here to soften the blow, to kind of tame everybody's rage. If we can just come together and sing and love, and then when you get this boy's backstory. Now, I've done a million videos on this, so I don't feel like revisiting it, but we're going to do it anyway, right? When this picture came out, and the video is still there, it's that video I did on Kendall Jenner with the Pepsi commercial, right? I specifically said, you know what? I bet you that this kid does not want to take this picture, and he's actually terrified because we already done the research and we discovered that at the time he was adopted by 2 white women. And so the narrative that was presented to everybody was that he was crying because he just wanted everybody to come together. He just wanted there to be love. For my sign language people, I think this is love, right? Or love, right? And he just wanted there to be love, right? That was the narrative that was put out there. Then you discover, oh, hell no. They forced him to go up there and hug this officer just as they had just beat a few people's faces in. The boy has seen it, and then they're going to send him over there to go hug him so they could get the picture, right? He was their cool, like, experiment. Oh, let's adopt a black kid and put him in some really cool clothes and, send him out there and we'll be the voice of unity through our black son that we've adopted, only for us to find out that they drove the whole family off a cliff and killed him and his younger siblings, in addition to abusing them and starving them. But again, love, right? Let's do the love, right? And so people continue to just not take what was happening in the world seriously, to the point where even the large corporations started hopping in on the BS. So now I want to go back to what even triggered that picture, or at least the response that I had when I made that video. Let's go to this one. I'm going to cut sound because I don't feel like having to deal with Pepsi and their nonsense, right? Where This, and mind you, this is at the peak with everything that's happening. And so, no, let's give them a Pepsi, guys. Oh, and we'll have the diverse people in the shoot. Woo! Freedom! Yeah, let's play it again. I'm gonna start it back over. Yeah, let's go back. Oh, I gotta close that one. Yeah, let's. God dang it, that is not what I said. All right, let me go back to this video. So it was freedom, and yeah, live bold, America. We love it. It was so great. Let me share it one more time, just to drive the narrative here, right? Kylie, where'd you go? Kylie, hold on. Kylie's hiding. No, you ain't getting off that easy. Get back over here. All right. Going back to this commercial, because we really got to dissect what's going on in this. All right. So again, you have this commercial, and it's all fun and games. Let me backtrack. Right. First of all, when have you been at a police riot where everybody's happy, everybody's smiling, it's a good time? Look at her right here. She is just, this one right here is just, look at her clapping. This is just, I love freedom. I love America, right? This guy is cheering her on. Yeah, you get out there and be brave because I'm not going to do it, right? And mind you, now he's shooting his shot, right? Because, I mean, she is a model, so I get it, but he's shooting his shot. He has forgotten what he's out there for. And they're going to keep moving. Yeah. And wait, hold on. I told y'all they spend all day on these signs, right? So she got her sign. I have this video flipped, so the signs are going to be backwards, right? Here comes some more people. Yes. Give us, hold on. Let me go back. Yes. Give us nothing. Give us nothing. Yeah. Woo. Freedom. Okay, right? Got all that going in. Let's put some black folks in here so she has some street cred because the black folks approve, specifically the black men, because, you know, they love to paint the narrative that we only date white women these days. So, yeah, put that in there. All right. Keep going. Oh, now here's the officer, right? Now we're going to make sure that this officer has a good cheekbone here. Now, he don't really got a strong chin, but we're going to make the officer somewhat semi-attractive and make it seem like if you're just nice to this guy, he'll be nice to you, right? And everybody's still cheering. This is the happiest protest I have ever seen. Everybody is just in a good up, and she is, what does Tyra Banks call it? The smiles with the eyes, where you smile with the eyes? She is giving a look here. Look, watch me walk. Don't worry, guys. I'll fix the problem. I know what to do. I got it. Only I can do this. And then let's just bring in the diversity hire. We're going to put her in there, right? Because we got to show that it's a unified global experience and everybody's ready. And she's going to capture the moment. Yes, right? A perfect angle, right? We're going to get that. We're going to get it. Everybody's still waiting because somehow she's going to carry the load of all the oppression. She's going to do it. Everybody is just so impressed, especially the black folks. They are just out here happy that she would do such a thing. And right? Don't worry, guys. I got it. Here's a Pepsi that I somehow brought to a protest. And don't worry, it's still ice cold. Been out here for 3 hours with our signs. And, oh, guys, this is perfect. The perfect shot. I got it, right? And then he's going to take a sip. Now, I know these other ones are pissed off because, you know, they thirsty as hell. And you over here just sipping. And these three over here been standing outside all day throwing tear gas. And you get to sip the Pepsi. You didn't bring them for the rest of them? Anyway. And now that she's had the Pepsi, everybody celebrates because now freedom has been won. The issue is over. Oh, yes, the joyous white women who are just, woo, freedom, right? This has fixed all the problems. Yeah, go on and hug the camera, girl. That's right. Hug the camera, lady. She's going to celebrate because, guys, that's all we had to do. Now he's like, hey, guys, I think we were tripping. We just need to go ahead. And maybe pull back some because you know what? I think they have a point. And that's when she saved the world. I need folks to be fucking serious, okay? Like, I need people to be serious here. And so folks have been playing forever and a day, right? They have been playing forever and a day. Where am I going with this? All right, I'm going to let that one, I'm going to go to this next page because, my God, I can spend all day on this. And that's what I was saying for, like, a lot of people in white America, they don't see this as the same. This is just a cool, trendy thing to talk about. None of them will be talking about Renee in a month. They'll move on to the next, right? And that goes back to the conversation of the cool trend versus everybody's livelihood. And that's why I say, like, folks don't get it. For some folks, this is going to these protests or the No Kings marches. This is like going to happy hour for them. But it's just going to happy hour and having a political discussion and then being on their way. And what people don't realize is that the government has weaponized itself against everybody. And the reality is they don't want, when I'm talking about the government, they don't want a repeat of 2020. That's why they're really dropping the hammer, right? And I do want to bring a few more videos because when I say the idea of dropping the hammer, that also means that now they're going to throw any and everything at the wall because they need to make an example out of people to get people to be fearful. Because if you get too many people who really start bucking up, you really do have an issue. Because here's the reality. It's 340 plus million people that live in the United States. Ain't enough officers to arrest all of us. Ain't enough officers to take us all out. And I think people sometimes don't think about that. Y'all are really letting this old ass, out of shape man who's one step from the casket punk the whole country. But anyway, that being said, I want to go to this clip too, because when I say the idea of throwing anything at the wall, because again, they need to keep people in compliance. And the first demographic that's always going to be the first to get back into compliance is always going to be white America. Because again, they feel like they have the most to lose and they're not about to lose anything. And so this is Roosevelt High School, right? I killed the sound. This was ICE showing up to the high school let out, right? Understand, everybody's represented at this high school, every race, everything. So even when some people say, oh, this isn't my fight, blah, 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 I hear that. But the issue is, even when it is not our fight, we are still collateral in some of this. I don't know if you can tell, if you see this kid that has the locks, Clay, this is definitely one of us, right? This kid with the locks right here. But you have ICE showing up to the schools. It was so bad that they had to close the schools down for the rest of the week last week. And again, these are ICE agents assaulting teenagers, right? These are kids. These aren't even anybody who has done anything. But I want to go a bit further because it doesn't stop there, right? Because there was a smart aleck who was trying to give me a hard time on the last video, because everybody, sometimes folks get mad when I start somewhat bringing up what's happening and tying us into the conversation. And I always get this pushback where folks are like, Calvin, you be doing too much fear mongering. Why are you trying to speak about things that haven't even happened yet? At this point, you need to understand that whenever they say they're going to do something, you need to be 10 steps ahead of what it is that they're plotting to do, because there is no limit to how low they will go. And so for the ones who are saying, well, this doesn't tie with black folks, here's exhibit A. All right. This woman got in a car accident and somehow now she needs to be detained by ICE. I cut the audio on this one as well because it is somewhat of a traumatizing soundtrack to listen to. All right. Boom. Right. This is a black woman who gets in a car accident. This is ICE. For some reason, they're just going to grab her. Like I said on that last live, one of the things that's going to start happening in these spaces is because black people, we can look like a whole lot of different groups of people. And we have lots of different phenotypes that give us a distinctive look where we can pass for a whole bunch of different things. There are going to be black folks who get snatched up under mistaken identity. So a woman gets in a car accident, and rather than even making sure she's okay or calling EMS or trying to get some help for her, they decide to snatch her up and take her to God knows where. So when I say that this stuff is not just us spewing hot air, the idea of people always trying to say everything is fear-mongering, y'all call things fear-mongering until it hits your doorstep. And then y'all be like, when the stuff happens, Calvin, what do we do? You tell me, since y'all know everything. Because there's a whole segment, even in our collective, that for some reason want to pretend that they're above and almost like immune to anything that's happening. And that's why I say this conversation of community. You're going to have some folks in our collective who want to always move as individuals, who will never have an understanding, of what it means to move as a collective, because they always want to just be that individual, or they always think that they're above. All right. And so what's ending up happening is, please understand that with everything that's happening, it's just the litmus test to see what it is that Americans will allow. In the same way that America allowed black folks to constantly get killed unarmed by the police, that was the litmus test. How much can we do? How much can we get away with? And so we've already been in the collateral box, so they know they can do stuff to us. And so it's like, now let's start getting to the other different groups of people, so on and so forth. And let's see how far we can get to, right? And so with that being said, understand, yes, technically this ain't our fight, but unfortunately, we're still collateral to everybody else's nonsense. Unfortunately, it's how it's always been. It's not saying that we're supposed to go out there and lead the charge, but it's at least saying be alert. Be aware of what it is you're up against. Be aware of the spaces that you're in. You currently have an entire fleet of uneducated, out of shape white men that only had to train for, I want to say, 47 days. And they get to go get guns and they get to go and harass people and determine whether or not they're citizens. Their job is Border Patrol, immigration enforcement. Why are you getting some lady who got in a car accident? Make it make sense, right? And then we even saw what happened with Keith Porter. I'm going to shift gears real quick and go to that article. Right? Let's go to Keith Porter. Right now, let's go to that. All right, it's time to read, kids. All right, why no charges? Friends, family of man killed by off-duty ICE officer asked after New Year's Eve shooting. Keith Porter, 43, had been firing a gun into the air to celebrate before he was killed. Family members say if the shooter weren't an ICE agent, we would expect that there would be an arrest, community leader says. Now, this is a black man, right? After a man was shot and killed by an off-duty U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer on New Year's Eve in in the Northridge neighborhood of Los Angeles, his friends and family, as well as community. Oh, I didn't even check to see if y'all can see this or not. Okay, y'all can see it. All right. What was that? Friends and family, as well as community groups, are questioning why the agent has not been arrested in connection with the shooting. The Los Angeles Police Department has released little information about the killing of Keith Porter, 43, and the ICE agent who shot him has not been identified. Asani Tyler, a cousin of Porter, said in an interview that she had been firing a newly acquired gun, or he had been firing a newly acquired gun into the air to ring in the new year before he was killed. LAPD and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department have warned against the long-standing practice of shooting into the air in celebration for decades. It can be deadly as the bullets fall to the ground, and it's also a felony in California, but it persists in some areas. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said the officer was in his apartment when he heard Porter firing. The officer took his ICE-authorized firearm and left his apartment to investigate. Again, immigration enforcement, border patrol. You are not the regular police. This is not even your jurisdiction. When the officer encountered the armed suspect and identified himself as law enforcement, McLaughlin said Porter pointed out and shot the weapon at the agent and refused to drop it. Now that piece, I know it's a crock of bull. First of all, it's so easy to say, well, we're always the aggressor. I'm gonna come back to that thought in a second. He was forced to defensively use his weapon and exchange gunfire with the shooter, McLaughlin said. Two neighbors told Capital and Maine that they heard 3 shots followed by a pause lasting about 1 minute. Then another volley of 3 shots followed. Carter Nunez, a resident of the apartment complex where the shooting occurred, said he saw Porter's body laying in the courtyard and police officers searching for bullets with metal detectors. The ICE presence is very high, and the things you're doing around the community are terrible, Nunez says. It's not something you find comfort living with. Another resident who would not give their name said they found bullet holes in the wall. Friends, family, and advocates have expressed concern over the lack of an arrest or charges in the case. This is another black father-son cousin villager snatched without any regard for his life, said Tyler Porter's cousin. Or Tyler Porter's cousin. And once again, this law enforcement not being held accountable for the loss of life. All right, and then they talk about where he grew up and everything. He was a loving person. This is him with the family. All right, I'm going to stop right there. And so with that being said, like I said, it's fear-mongering until it hits your doorstep. Now, the other thing that we're starting to see is because we also have a different administration that moves a little differently when it comes to law enforcement, we're watching law enforcement pretty much get a pass for everything. You've already seen J.D. Vance when he was talking about Renee's situation say, well, you know, anybody who interferes with the ICE investigation is automatically in the wrong, blah, 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 all of that kind of stuff. And so even with this situation, what happens in here? We see the same narrative. First of all, there's no body cam because he's off duty. But what happens? You see a black man that gets killed. Here comes the narrative. Oh, he all of a sudden shot at the ICE officer. And I have 2 questions. One, did the ICE officer even identify himself as law enforcement? You know, or was he somebody who showed up as a vigilante trying to be a hero, and then there's some kind of confrontation? But the other question that I really have is, New Year's is a happy time. People are in a good mood. You're happy you made it through the bullish of 2025. You're with your family. You're with your friends. Why would someone abruptly all of a sudden want to randomly just shoot an ICE officer because the ICE officer told them to put their weapon down, if that's the case? I need people to really start critically thinking about how this goes. But because it's so easy for the police to always cover up and just throw out any narrative, it's easy to believe because, again, for a lot of folks just reading the article, they already assume that Keith is guilty just because he is a black man and he had a weapon. And they said that you can't shoot the guns in the air on New Year's. So he must deserve to die for some reason, right? Second Amendment disciples, I got questions. This is when y'all get to come in, right? We love the Second Amendment and we love the freedoms. Somebody's freedom has been imposed upon where a person who was off duty decided to go step out and not mind their business, and now somebody is dead. But we're going to shift the narrative and somehow make it seem like it's all that person's fault. And for anybody who wants to start talking about, well, he shouldn't have been shooting the gun, I hear that, but everybody and their mom does that everywhere. That's not a legitimate excuse to kill somebody, especially if they weren't posing a threat to anybody. There's that. And so we continue to see the same nonsense. And so going back to what I was saying, when we're talking about ICE, we've already seen that when it comes to even training, if you have actual police who go to a police academy, right? Weeks, months of training, and depending on the agency, sometimes they have to leave the state. They got to go to military bases and train. They got to do all this kind of stuff. If even some of those officers don't even have the emotional intelligence to sometimes deal in tricky situations where there is a viable threat. maybe there's a weapon, maybe there's a knife, maybe there's a gun. If they even have a hard time making that decision whether or not to pull the trigger, what do you think somebody who's only had 47 days of training is going to do, right? And then what gets even crazier when you start looking at who is in ICE, right? We've already seen the evidence of Nazis that are in ICE. We've seen lots of Proud Boys. We've seen people who are from or tied to January 6th in there, the Patriot Front, all these different groups. The ones that ride in the U-Haul truck with the dockers in the blue polos and the hacky sack pillow thing on their faces. Some of them, all these people are ICE agents, right? And so the thing that I want us to understand is the goal right now is to get out of the reactive space. This is why I'm always speaking about things that people should start looking for or expecting, because when we constantly just sit in a space of reaction, we're never prepared for whatever comes because we're just waiting for something else to happen. And then we spend all day reacting to that, as opposed to saying, hey, these are the things that we're up against. And this is what you need to look for. This is what you need to be careful about. If you got those friends that sometimes make some poor choices, you might want to give them a heads up. This ain't the time for no foolery, because they're making examples out of everybody. And so when people kind of push back and get mad because I'm talking about what is to come, that gets on my nerves, because I'm not even trying to sound cocky, but damn, I be right all the time. Like, I'm always right. And I don't like being right. I want to be wrong sometimes. I don't want some of this stuff to happen, but literally everything that I said would happen back in 2024 is happening. Every last thing. Everything. And I promise you, I'm not a cocky person. I promise you, I don't do this crap for clout. I just want us all to be well. And the reason that we can have that conversation is because when you pay enough attention to cause and effect, and you pay enough attention to history and systems and patterns, you know what's coming down the pipeline, right? And in addition, they gave us the entire pamphlet of what they were going to do. We spent the latter half of 2024 just going through Project 2025 and talking about what was coming. And folks were cussing me out there. Trump said he don't even know about that. Here y'all go. Y'all just because killing Kamala and she locked up all the men. I said, right, because now the DA of San Francisco is really going out of her way to process low offense crimes with marijuana, because that's the biggest thing on her plate is people with a dime bag. That's what she's going after. That's where we wanted to go. You know, I need to sip on that because god dang it. This is a great cup. My friend got me this cup with HU, you know. It's like she made me this tea like an hour ago. It's still really hot. This is a nice cup. All right, Howard. Y'all got it's sponsored by Nat Geo. All right. This okay. Anyway, so with all that being said, that's why I said we have to get into a space where we're not just always on the receiving end and being reactive. It's about being proactive. That's why I keep talking about discernment and community. When you have some discernment, you can kind of have an idea of what is to come, so you can move accordingly, right? I think one of the things that's been happening, especially even like when you talk like the federal government and you know, when they did all the DEI and got rid of all the people and stuff like that, some of those agencies understood what was coming down the pipeline, and a lot of those agencies, as a way to save some of their staff from getting riffed or getting fired or laid off because of their position, they started changing the titles. Okay, this person is no longer, you know, an equity blah, 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 blah. They changed it to like office personnel division of, you know, employee support or something like that, right? So you saw some people trying to move accordingly, even though Elon still got them too. Like, nope. As a matter of fact, since y'all want to change titles, if in the past you had this title, you're still going to go, right? So that's why it's always like, you're going to have to be 10 steps ahead of the game, right? That's all I'm trying to say. Because again, when it comes to something like ICE, or when it comes to what we saw with Keith Porter, you don't get to be judge, jury, and executioner, right? There's a thing called due process, but we're now watching due process get thrown out of the window. And this is why I get annoyed where we keep talking about, hey, this is what people need to look out for. And the first thing you hear people say, well, no, they can't do that. Like I got a relative that drives me crazy where every time I say, I just want you to know they're about to do this, they're about to do that. Oh no, they can't do that. Yes, they can. They can. Listen, have they listened to anything yet? This is an administration that does whatever they want, and who's going to check them? They don't give a F, right? Anything goes. They can tell you any blatant lie, and they don't get enough pushback because white America honestly is fine with it. They're fine with it. Whiteness is the only thing protecting this administration, because if this administration had any other group of faces, if Trump was anything other than a white man, it would be the end of him, right? The whole administration, all of them flushed out. But whiteness will protect that. Okay, I am going to pause because I have not read. Actually, I got one more thing to say. Yeah, I got one more thing. And then I want to say this for those who have spent all the time saying, where are the black folks, or how come black folks aren't out here, or now all of a sudden they're trying to make us public enemy number one and trying to paint us as being complacent with what's happening. Cut the crap, because the reality is black folks have given you all a playbook on what to do and what not to do. Nobody studied it. Nobody read it. You can look at every example in history of how we were able to get what it was that we wanted, or vice versa. Nobody's doing the research. And now, going back to what I said about being proactive, we also need to understand that even some of the tactics that we once used no longer work in this current era, because again, like I said about Russell Vought, the guy that is the pioneer and originator of Project 2025, one of the things that he researched while he was an undergrad was resistance movements. He literally studied everything that black people did, and as he put together his Project 2025, he utilized what he understood from the black civil rights movement and the black liberation movement and the black nationalist movement and this movement and all of that, and put the playbook of how to combat all of the hurdles and roadblocks that they were anticipating they would run into while trying to implement Project 2025. Right? 10 steps ahead of the game. As opposed to just being reactive and coming up with an old playbook that we could easily just, mesh out in the courts. Oh no, bigger playbook. This goes back to what I was saying. Since 2018, I've been saying the goal has been to cement things. Every day, there's little bits and pieces that get cemented every single day, and have been for the last 8 years. Right? And I think there's people who think that this will all just get fixed with a new election. Oh yeah, just wait till the midterms, if we even get that. We'll just wait till then. Even if Democrats can take the House, take the Senate, let's say they impeach Trump. Let's say the Senate convicts Trump and kicks him out of office. And let's say his entire cabinet is flushed out, and then you bring in the next group of folks and so on and so forth. Do you know how much stuff is still locked in and cemented through executive order, through policy, through these judges that have lifetime appointments? Like, there's so much crap that it's going to take us years to get out of. I need people to also be comfortable and understand that it's highly unlikely that you will see an element of normalcy in your lifetime at this point. You just have to fight and pray that your children can have it better than you. That doesn't mean you just lay down and take it, but that means that for the next 20, 30 years, we're actively undoing the nonsense that they were able to put together in a year. Because this is like, opening the can of worms, right? You can dismantle 30, 40, 60 years of precedent in a year. And that's exactly what they've done, right? Protections, gutted. Guidelines, gutted. Guardrails, gutted. All kind of things that were there to ensure that the country would be well and that everybody would be okay. All that crap is gutted. And some of that stuff can't be rebuilt. It's like you're going to have to look at the entire system as something totally different and just have a brand new approach. Because if you just go back to what was, they can just come back and do it again. Right? Now I'm going to stop. All right. I did not mean to go on this long soapbox for a full hour, but I just need folks to be for real. Like, I think folks are still out here playing. We got folks who either, again, none of this matters to them because it doesn't affect them. And so it is what it is. And they're content and they're perfectly fine with everything as long as they're still getting their paycheck. To the hell with everybody else. You got some folks who want to build a brand on being contrarian. They never have any opinions, never have any ideas, never have any solutions, but they're always the first ones to show up and say, I told you so. And then when you ask them when, they can't tell you when or what they said because there's no evidence of it, but they like to be the first one in line to be in the way. So just understand, I'm going to get to that in a second too, because Stephen A. Smith is going to catch it for me in a second too. But I just need folks to really lock in. By the way, sometimes I get whacked with the chat because people are like, you missed my comment. Understand, when I'm sitting here talking for an hour, I don't really see the chat. So then when I go back to the chat, I literally mentally give myself like a minute to kind of scroll and just kind of grab a few. So the best time to get my attention in the chat is right now while I'm at the chat. But I'm telling you right now, I scrolled up to the top. So I'm just going to skim through real quick. Let me see here. Somebody said they love Coke anyway. They're talking about Coca-Cola. Now, I'm not going to lie. I do like Pepsi for the first 3 sips, but I think Coca-Cola tastes better in the long run as far as the overall taste. What up? Yumalia Bode said, just jumping on. Been waiting to hear your voice, Calvin. Your resident baby boomer is not feeling very optimistic these days. Now, I will say, folks, I need us to have some fight. That's not directed towards you, but just in general, I think one of the things that's been driving me crazy too, and this isn't really us. I see it with a lot of the other group. But every time I see something, and I keep seeing like we're doomed. I'm like, damn, y'all ain't got no fight in y'all. Like, this is the first time white folks are being inconvenienced and we're doomed. Oh, y'all didn't even try. Like Frankie said it off. You couldn't even wait. Like, damn, right? Folks be getting like Martin Luther King and them was getting cracked in the skull with crowbars and police clubs and bit by dogs and stuff. And y'all get you see a news story and tap out. Oh God, I don't know what to do. Oh, it's time to go to Canada. Lord, get some fight, folks. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, but much love to you. Somebody said you're being shadow banned, brother. Oh, I think YouTube been trying to get me out of here. But I also do a lot more lives than pre-made videos, so it's shifting where I fall in the algorithm. Anyway, let me see here. Somebody said Joe Biden was president for 4 years. He was Democrat. He was quick to pass an anti-Asian hate bill, but not a black hate crime bill. Can we not talk about that? So we definitely covered that in one of the lives. God, what is the name of that goddamn bill? Yeah, because I had some thoughts on that too. I'll just say this. The other conversation that I think people need to really be aware of is the fact that your liberation is never going to come from any elected official. Doesn't matter which party they're in. Now, we know that there's one party that's actively dismantling and getting rid of everybody's civil rights and everything under the sun because that party has decided to cave to greed, right? And so those who are running things are lining their pockets, getting very, very wealthy, setting themselves up and their children up to be good at the expense of everybody else. So the idea is your liberation is never going to come from a politician, but a politician can definitely strip away your liberation, if that makes any sense. And so the idea of even how we look at these politicians is not to look at them as a hero or look at them as a savior. It's look at them as, okay, this is somebody I have some element of leverage with. So what can we get here? Now, I will say when we got into that era of the Asian crime bill, I wish I knew which video that was because there was somebody who gave an excellent analysis of actually what was and how the bill was kind of somewhat mistitled and actually included everybody in it, but they named it that specific bill to just highlight hate crimes and blah, 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 some other stuff like that. I'll have to find it because that's a great question. And technically there is somewhat of a bill that includes Black folks. The problem in the United States is they don't like to make bills that are specifically race oriented. It always has to be something inclusive where they can deem it illegal. Now, what has changed is this current administration is kind of playing that same game, but flipping the script where they're now painting anything that favors even just groups, even when we're not just talking about a race, but like you, and you see like with some of the laws, terms like marginalized or underrepresented and stuff like that are now also getting the chopping block. And so what this administration has decided to do is they're going to, this is what I call the Great White Renaissance. They're going to rebuild everything for white America. The rest of us, good luck to y'all, right? And so I always reference the civil lawsuit from 1999 with Black farmers, where again, they sued the United States government, specifically the USDA, saying, hey, one of the reasons why we've lost 14 million of our 15 million acres is because we weren't a part of the USDA program and so on and so forth. And it was because of racism. And when it got up to the Supreme Court, they lost the case because they were like, you can't prove racism. You have to give us cause and effect. And so fast forward, if we want to talk about like the Biden administration, some of the lawyers that were in that administration went back and kind of looked at some of the claims within that case and then created the policy, said, okay, well, here's where we're at. We understand that there are pockets of farmers in this country, mainly Black farmers, but also other farmers of different groups and different races that were not able to benefit from the USDA program because they were left out because of their race. And that caused harm as far as that conversation of cause and effect. There was a harm that was there. This left them out of the opportunities for commerce with business and everything else like that. And so they're owed something. And then that's when you got the $4.5 billion settlement. But then we saw white farmers sued. Then they got into the litigation and the money never came. And then finally they got half of what they should have got. They got $2 billion. And I'm surprised Orange Man hasn't stripped that away too. But so yeah, there's that. Good, great comment. Where are we at here? I saw that Maria said JD Vance said they're going door to door. Where do we live? What is going on out here? My God. Okay. Let's see. Going door to door. Somebody said respect. I knew Avocado Cream. I knew he was gonna say this. Respectfully disagree about them painting the narrative that Black men only date white women. Don't know about DC, but here on the West Coast, it's pretty much true. 80% of Black men that are married to Black women. But I do understand that there's a whole lot of swirling on the West Coast, right? You folks are gonna marry who they marry, go for what you go for, and enjoy, right? But I think some of that does get sensationalized in our like social media and everything else like that. And a lot of times, those who to me move as a detriment to the collective, and I'm not saying you're a detriment by dating outside the race, but the ones who actively don't like their own race tend to be the loudest ones in the room, tend to be the ones who want to be heard, right? Remember that college football coach? We did a video on it where he had got his new position, and then out of nowhere he was like, "And I'm also proud that my wife is white." Okay, we're happy for you, but what does that got to do with football? Okay. Anyway, let's see here. Somebody said, I just saw Keith Porter's daughter, the video Keith daughter, I'm sorry, I just saw a video Keith Porter's daughter put out today. Just said, I saw the video and I got annoyed because, of course, like an idiot, I went and looked at the comments section. I was like, oh, confirmation for everything I already thought. Do yourself a favor. Do not read the comment section on these articles because you're going to see the worst in people, right? Somebody said, this is a nice one. Everyone is a target that isn't part of the 1%. That includes poor white folks or those who believe to be adjacent. Like, even, I'm glad you brought that up, Neural Bay Vibes. Even the bigger picture, right? Think back to, can we just go to, I'll just teach for a little bit. Can we go back to, I might not get to all my topics tonight, by the way, but we'll see where we go. Going back to the era of slavery, right? Now, we know that when slavery was still legal, only 36% of white folks who were even, and that means within the South, I'm not talking about northern states where slavery was abolished, because people like to use these different little stats and try to make it seem like 0.2% of white people own slaves and everybody. No. Anyway, 36% of white folks in the South own white slaves. And that's just what you call it. That is just the name on the deed, right? Remember, families could own people, right? So, if you have a family of 13 people that have the plantation, it's dad, mom, and his 11 children, not including the children that probably came from somebody enslaved that they're not counting. When you did that census, it's one person being named as the slave owner or the plantation owner, not all 13 in the household. But I say that to say, with that 36%, you had a huge segment of poor white people who couldn't afford to enslave anybody. And at the same time, because they had to compete with a free labor force, because those who were enslaved did not get paid, nobody was hiring them. They were also very unskilled, right? Couldn't do a whole lot. Never really got the on-the-job training because there's no jobs for you. You got to figure it out yourself because we don't have anything for you. We got a whole plantation. They can sit here, they can plow the field, they can do the tobacco. They're doing merchant work. They're doing architecture. They're doing everything. We don't need you. So you need to figure it out, right? But you know what we can do for you? Because they started recognizing that there was a huge uprising of, go back to like Bacon's Rebellion, right? You got to kind of look back at that. But you had an uprising where you had a lot of poor white men and some women who were frustrated because they didn't have a sense of their livelihood. There was no way for them to take care of themselves because there were no jobs, there were no opportunities. And their biggest rage was those who were enslaved took all their jobs, even though the people who were enslaved didn't ask to be there. They weren't like, we're happy over here getting whooped and doing stuff for free from dusk till dawn, right? Like we're happy having to have your babies out of, rape and everything else. Like we're happy to get castrated in front of everybody. Like we're happy to be butt broken or happy to get our foot cut off or happy to get our family separated or happy to get sold to another plantation or sometimes get sold to a plantation that's not even in the continental United States, right? We're not happy to be a part of any of that. But wealthy white Americans, super wealthy, they started to understand that, dang, we got to do something because there's more of them than us. So we have to do something to make them feel that they are valued. So you know what? We know you can't afford to own anybody. We know you can't afford to own a lot of land, but you know what? You can work on my land. You can work on my plantation. You know what? And as a matter of fact, you get to do the fun job. You get to be an overseer. You don't have to pick the corn. You don't have to pick the cotton and get the calluses and everything on your hands and the bushels. You don't got to do any of that. You can be the overseer. And your job is to whip them into shape and to make sure that they do everything that they're supposed to do, right? That's your job. Your job is you get to monitor when they have their church service to make sure that they're not plotting or doing anything, against the grain of what keeps this plantation going, making sure they're not rioting or plotting anything. You get to be that, right? You still won't really have anything. You're still going to be poor, but you know what? At least you won't be them. At least you won't be them. And unfortunately, many white Americans bought into that, bought into it, locked into it. And that has been their North Star, or the North Star for them, since forever and a day. So even when I don't want to say lowest, but even when the lowest of low white folks who really are just trying to make it to the end of the week because they really don't have the money, they will still latch on to, at least we're not this, right? At least this is not us, right? And so now you have to ask yourself, let's go back to the conversation of ICE. ICE's starting salary is $48,000. No background check. For a lot of people, this is their opportunity. They may not have been able to, land that cool job they wanted to land. They may not have been able to go to the trade school they wanted to go to. They may not have had the money for college. They may not have been able to afford, there's all these different things. And there's some people who have struggled for years and years and years. Now here comes ICE with an opportunity. All you got to do is maintain the status quo. We're going to pay you $48,000 a year starting out. You might even get a big signing bonus. And hey, you get a gun, you get power, you get a bunch of things. And so when we start talking about a lot of these white men living in 2026 who may not have had the lives that they wanted, who may have peaked in middle school, they didn't even peak in high school. Okay, they were losers in high school, right? They ain't been the ish since 7th grade, right? They ain't been jumping since pogs were a thing, right? This is the moment where they finally feel like they have some power. So after being ignored by that top 1% and not being included and watching everybody else thrive and live their best lives and so on and so forth, this is their opportunity. And so a lot of them are taking it. And one of the things that takes place when you have an authoritarian regime is that a lot of times the very people will work against their own interests and endorse and speed up the process of what you call the takeover. And so when you're looking at ICE and you look at the tens of billions of dollars that have gone into funding ICE, and you look at how many people have been breaking their necks to get those jobs. And what's even crazier, it's not just white men. Like when you look at some of these, especially when I was looking at Minneapolis, I saw some Somali people working in ICE. I said, wait a minute now. Okay, all right. You've seen some brown folks in there. You see a sprinkle of black folks in there. You've seen a little bit of everybody in there, right? Because a lot of times, again, economically, people will contribute to somebody else's oppression if it means that their livelihood is going to be okay. And that's the sad aspect about society. And so a lot of these ICE agents, and we're starting to see what some of them have come from. We've seen some have already been dismissed because they're sex offenders, or they've sexually assaulted people already, or they've had other things going on. Like there's a lot going on out there. And so with a lot of these people, again, this is the first moment in their life where they feel like they're somebody because they have power over somebody. They have a weapon. And they have a system that's backing them. And that's why even when you see the aggression that takes place, they feel free. They feel like they have the free will to do whatever, and nobody's going to come after them because they know that they're supported by the higher powers that be. And so that same mentality dates back to when we still had the plantations. And that's how they've always been able to kind of fool, especially white America and the working class white America, into buying into the system. You won't get to be one of us, but we'll give you the luxury of being above somebody else. And so for this current moment with ICE, it's, well, you get to be above the immigrants. You get to be above them. You get to just go up to anybody and ask them if they're a citizen, right? Because they're only doing it to certain groups of folks. They don't do this to white folks. You don't see ICE going and snatching up no Russians nowhere, right? You keep seeing that. All right. Anyway. And that was just the plantation. I didn't even get to the convict leasing conversation or the black codes law, because that, you want to live a nice life? Hey, you need to just enforce the black codes. You go out there or fugitive slave laws, like all kind of opportunities for you to have work here. What do you mean you can't find a job? Oh, we got all kind of choices for you to make. All right. Somebody said, ain't no stand your ground for us. Exactly. Somebody said many ICE agents were pardoned by racist evil Trump. Yeah, you got to think about them 1,600 that were pardoned from January 6th, right? Somebody said, you're a Leo. You're naturally cocky. Well, I agree, but then my rising sign is Scorpio, and Scorpios tend to be a little bit more down here. So when I went to the little lady, she was like, yeah, you're Scorpio rising, Aries moon. All your signs are fighting each other. When your Leo is ready to jump out, that Scorpio brings it back down to reality until somebody pisses you off, and then here comes the Aries jumping out. Anyway, let's see here. Well, some of y'all are whacking me on my 2 cents on what I said about Kamala. Here's the reality. Well, America made its choice, and we're living through it at this point. So we'll never know what the other end could have been like. But this is where we're at. So this is where we got to keep moving from. All right. Anyway. Somebody said maybe, what up, Sarah? Maybe if Orange Man, things will finally change. I don't know. The theory that I've always had is, let's just say something happens and they boot Orange Man out of office, right? And then they put JD Vance in there. My theory would be that if that were to happen, you'd see MAGA split, because half of MAGA would feel like JD Vance is a traitor and he went against the big leader. And then the other half might actually get on board. And then as far as the GOP side, they're just all over the place, because now the House, especially the GOP House, has to decipher between appeasing to MAGA or appeasing to what you call the George Bush Republicans, or that demographic. And I feel like that's when they would no longer have that block that they have, because they wouldn't be on the same page. That would be my theory if he was pushed out of office. I don't really know what would happen if he went on to wherever he would go after this. As far as, I don't know. We'll see. All right, we gotta move on, y'all. I have so many other topics to talk about. Somebody said, I don't think things will be normal again. I need people to, I feel the same way. And I also think the goal is not to return to what was, because even before Trump got in there, things weren't great. Even before Trump got in the first time, things weren't great. We had the symbolism, things were okay, things were a lot better, but they've never been great. They've never been amazing. There's always been injustice. There's always been the wealth gap. There's always been an extreme difference between the super wealthy and the very poor. There's always been an attack on education. There's always been an attack on people's livelihood. Big pharma and the big corporations and greed have always had rank in this country. And so I think the goal is to get to something we haven't been to before. That's what we need to get to. I'm not trying to go back to life before 2024. I don't want to go back to, even as much as I enjoyed the symbolism and as much as I love seeing a black woman as the first lady and the kid, I loved all of that. But times weren't even that great then. They were better, right? And there were lots of things that were able to take place, but things could be so much better, right? So I'm not trying to go back to what was. I'm trying to get to what could be, right? That's where I'm at. Because even during the great years of Obama, that's when a lot of these police shootings went viral, right? Even during what some people love to say are the great years of Clinton, we had a whole bunch of issues going on in this country. Same thing. Well, the Bush years were not great for most people, but there's always been something going on. So again, like, every era has been terrible. Sometimes I'm like, damn, if I could be born in another era in the United States, what would I be born into? And then I realize there isn't really a great one for us to be born into. No matter, especially as Black folks, doesn't matter what era, whether it's the 80s, now you got to deal with Reaganomics and the HIV epidemic and the crack epidemic and the war on drugs in that era. If you go to the 60s, now it's the civil rights there and all your leaders are getting killed and everything else like that. If you go to no matter where you go, it has never been great for us to begin with. And so I'm not trying to return to what was. I'm trying to get to what can be, right? That sounds very like I'm running for office, but no, I'm not. So don't get any idea. Okay, I'll read a few more comments. We gotta keep moving, y'all. We're not gonna make all of my topics tonight, and that's okay. What up, Kenneth Tukes? Check out. He just did an interview with the same channel I just did an interview. I posted it on my community tab a few weeks ago when I did the one show, so check that out. Anyway, I will also say y'all gonna have to get past this purity test with these candidates. At this point, y'all, okay. Where are we going here? I already talked about the people that being found with the idea of murder. All right, let's get to Stephen A. Smith. I've dragged him enough on this channel, so I'm not even going to spend too much time. But even with his response to, the Renee situation, his response was with the ICE officer, don't expect him to be prosecuted. It was completely justified. She tried to run over the officer. One of the things I'm going to say, and I've been saying for a good minute, is be wary of those who gaslight us. Again, right? Because if we're talking about somebody like a Stephen A. Smith, understand, he already has a 5-year extension with ESPN worth $100 million. And he also now has been given a contract with XM Radio for $36 million. I said it before, it's an unpopular opinion, but grifting pays well. You can make some good money tap dancing. You can make some great money selling out your community. It's always been that way. And now I will say what's interesting with this one is this time he kind of pissed off white folks. So I was like, well, we'll see what happens, but I don't think anything's really going to happen. But the issue is people like him, they understand that they can have a better livelihood being a mouthpiece for white supremacy. And like I said, there will be many. There are going to be so many new faces we see pop in or jump into conversations or do whatever because they're going to get their check. They want to get whatever it is, and they recognize that, okay, yeah, my folks will be mad at me, but I'll be rich. And unfortunately, again, that idea of that individual mindset, that's just how he moves. I understand that this man is not for us. I've seen the inklings and conversations of him talking about wanting to run for president. He's not for us. Never has been. Never will be, right? And it's also very noticeable that he tends to be harder on black folks in politics than everybody else, especially black women. He loves, don't let a black woman be in any kind of political space. He got every opinion in the world. And what's also very interesting too, is that a lot of times, I've said this before, a lot of times when people do all that tap dancing, when they want to disassociate from black people collectively, they have to be over performative. So not only do they say very unpopular things or things that shake the table, but then they also overly exaggerate their feelings about everything. So you notice that when Stephen A. Smith says whatever he says about some of these black folks in politics, specifically the black women, he's not only just enraged, but he's disgusted, right? Just disgusted because he knows that the biggest group of people lining his pockets are white conservative men. And he's not losing that bag, right? And so in addition to not only having viewpoints that are very questionable, again, he has to overcompensate. And so in order to make sure he keeps everybody happy, he has to show that he can destroy, things that other people are trying to build. Like he can stand in the way and not allow that to happen. He can make sure that he maintains that status quo for everybody else, right? And that's what makes him digestible for a lot of white America. And that's why he's able to kind of get into some of the spaces that he's in. Because what's funny to me is he has more smoke for a Joy Reid or Jasmine Crockett or all these other folks than he did for Jerry Jones. We literally caught Jerry Jones in Arkansas, right? Remember the picture from 1957 where he was one of the people actively working to stop those black kids from coming into the school? And you watched, I knew I had it. Let's go back to Stephen A. Smith's quote. Now, this was with regard to Jerry Jones, Mr. Toes to the line. I don't like Jerry Jones, and I'm into every time. So this was after we find the pictures of Jerry Jones right outside, taunting the Little Rock Nine. And you know it's a small world when you're in the picture taunting the Little Rock Nine and everybody else like that. And then Stephen A. Smith's response, "I'm pretty pissed off," Smith said in a recent First Take segment discussing the newly surfaced photo of Dallas Cowboys owner when he was 14. "I'm pissed off, but not for the reasons people think. I am very, very fond of Jerry Jones, and I'm not hiding that from anybody." Remember what I said about the over-performativeness and exaggerating, and you see he's checking off all the boxes. Is his record perfect? No. But I'm pissed off because he doesn't deserve what just happened. He doesn't deserve it. One report, our report, said he was 14 years old. Another report said he was 15 years old. At a minimum, that's 65 years ago. Now, we just watched this man say that woman justifiably deserved to get shot in the face 3 times, but he's going to go hard for this racist white man in this picture from the 50s. Photograph was taken 65 years ago on September 9th, 1957 at North Little Rock High in Arkansas. You're going to bring up a photo of Jerry Jones standing at this protest. No question what was happening is not something that anybody as a black man should be appreciative about, he continued. We had 6 students at that particular North Little Rock High School that were trying to desegregate the school. Nobody should be okay with that. We understand that. We get all of that. See, now they love to dismiss the part that actually matters. Yeah, we get that. We get that. It doesn't matter. But back to me defending my white friend. Racism is alive and well. Bigotry and prejudice is alive and well. We get all of that. Yeah, we understand that. But now for me to soften the blow, but you're going to bring up a photo of him when he was 14, 15 years old, 65, 66 years ago? All right, well, Tamir Rice was 12, and it was fine when he got killed. Trayvon Martin was 16, 15 years old? It was fine when he got killed, right? I don't remember all of the outrage and all the defending for them. But again, you break your neck to go and vouch for this super wealthy old ass white man who, even if he were fired from the Dallas Cowboys, he's rich for the rest of his life. This wouldn't even affect him. If you've ever driven past his house in Dallas, he has a different kind of money you can't even fathom. He'd be okay. But Stephen A. Smith is like, oh no. But Stephen understands, like, that's his bread and butter. He's not about to mess up his money, right? And so again, the theatrics, he has to let you know that he's one of the good ones, right? And so pretty much wherever the wind blows, he's going to go into that same climate. It's the same kind of nonsense. And watch it, the pendulum shifts the other way, and all of a sudden it becomes cool to to speak out against anti-Black violence again, then he'll jump the other way. But right now, he is securing his bag. And what's crazy is they love to put people like Stephen A. Smith onto these platforms. You give him $36 million to give terribly politically incorrect statements and viewpoints, because we've seen him say a lot of things that are like, what are you talking about? Where you watch him respond and react to things without having all the context, but has already gone on the full soapbox. But again, $36 million to do that, another $100 million to talk sports. That's where we're at. All right, let me read some comments here. We'll keep it moving. I swear that's gonna be like the last time I talk about him. I'm tired of talking about this fool. Somebody said, I agree. People not thinking big enough. The system can't help but to collapse because it's antisocial and psychotic to begin with. The way we have been living will lead to our demise. Change must happen. Let's see. You know what's crazy to me too? They spent all this time on like the student loan forgiveness and how they couldn't afford it, but they had all this money for ICE. They had all this money for Venezuela. They had all this money for Argentina. Like a mess, right? There was enough money for free healthcare right now. We ain't got that either. But no, we're gonna spend it on some other nonsense. Said, does tap dancing really pay that much? Look, $100 million, $36 million to get on everybody's nerves. Imagine that. $136 million in 5 years. Yeah, y'all know I've been whacking Jerry Jones since he had that toes to the line bit. Okay. I want to shift over because, like I said, we've already been talking about our media being compromised. Like we've seen what's been happening with everything. I want to shift gears and quickly just talk about what is this? Actually, before I do that, I want to read something else. This goes back to what I was saying about they don't want a repeat of 2020, and so they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that doesn't happen. One of the things that took place January 6th of all days, but 2026, the White House announced it was freezing $10 billion in funding for social services for 5 states: California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. The Trump administration is freezing $10 billion in funds for social services and child care in 5 Democratic-led states, according to the Department of Health and Human Services official with the agency, suggesting without evidence that the funding has been used fraudulently. I wanted to also take note of how many times they throw the word fraud around. It's smoke and mirror terms, right? Fraud, the idea is that somebody who is not white is getting something that they don't deserve, or they're doing something illegal, and it's coming out of your tax dollars. That's how they always paint the narrative of fraud. So pay attention to, most of the time when you hear the word fraud being tossed around by the current officials in the White House, it normally has something to do with a population that is not white. Anyway, according to report, or if it goes against their political viewpoint, where again, the idea of blue states, right? According to reports, HHS will cut off $7.4 billion in funding for temporary assistance for needy families program, which provides cash assistance to households, along with nearly $2.4 billion for child care and development fund. And then we fast forward 2 days, and then we saw the states actually filed a suit. And then as of 3 days ago, on Friday, January 9th, federal judge ruled that the White House cannot block federal money for child care subsidies and other programs aimed at supporting needy children and their families from flowing to 5 states: California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. While the judge did not rule on the legality of the funding freeze, he said the 5 states had met the legal threshold to protect the status quo for at least 14 days while arguments are made in court. And speaking of this fraud, what I found interesting, I saw this story too. Because I know that we saw the whole daycare little fraud schemer thing, and that was a whole thing. And then just to find out that there was this white woman who was a part of a $250 million fraud scheme, I'm like, okay, y'all are going to boogeyman everything under the sun, and in the actual faces of the problem, y'all have nothing to say. Crazy to me. But getting to what I want to get to, I want to get to this media piece. So shifting back, because that's why I lost my little footing here. Okay, so we saw what's kind of been going on with like CBS. Right, you saw they pulled the 60 Minutes piece that was going to, well, actually they pulled 2 pieces, right? We saw the piece about Epstein. You know, they are doing everything in their power to that thing, right? But then you also saw there was the 60 Minutes piece that was showing the conditions at the, I don't even want to say ICE camps, because they went and, you know, deported people to, you know, prisons in Central America and all that stuff like that, and just the living conditions. And you saw that they pulled the piece. Now, like I said, a lot of these networks and everything are being bought out by people who align with the same viewpoints that Orange Man has. And so everybody's been talking about Bari Weiss. So I do want to read this quick segment here. CBS's new controversial editor-in-chief, Bari Weiss, pulled a 60-minute story that was set to air last night about the torture and other horror conditions at CCOT, an El Salvador mega prison to which the Trump administration has sent hundreds of deportees over the last year. I don't know if you guys have seen that piece, but that was a very interesting watch. I said, oh, jeez, watch that when you get a chance. Weiss's reason for spiking the piece: the Trump administration officials refused to comment on it, raises questions about how CBS will be covering high-profile stories going forward, particularly ones related to controversial U.S. national security policies like war with Venezuela and the Trump administration's relationship with Israel. Indeed, the segment's lead reporter, Sharon Alfonsi, called the decision to delay the story political and observed that the administration officials now have a de facto veto over what CBS News will publish. If the administration's refusal to participate becomes a valid reason to spike a story, we have effectively handed over the kill switch for any reporting that we find inconvenient, she said. I'm going to stop right there. And the thing is, I want folks to pay attention to the bigger picture. We've been kind of talking about this anyway. One of the things that takes place when, again, you're kind of snatching up a country and we're shifting over, we're already in this whole authoritarian spot. Like when folks keep saying we're getting that, we're there. We're here. We're here. We are here, right? But one of the things you also do is you capture the media. We saw the building blocks, and it started with CNN, right? CNN gets bought out by the super right-wing person, and you watch CNN do a whole shift with how they present the news over the last few years, right? MSNBC, NBC News, all these people are owned by different corporations. Now you see there's a split now. MSNBC is what MS now, and then you have NBC News. Like everything is splitting because all of our media companies are, pretty much owned and operated by the same handful of people. But in addition to that, when it comes to the individual networks, you're starting to see people who, again, align with the same ideology and viewpoints of what you could say Orange Man wants, or even what's in Project 2025. And so that next step is trying to create that reset where you start to, I don't like the word indoctrinate because that word's getting on my nerves too, because they always use that every time they want to talk about the kids. And I'm like, y'all pretend to care about the kids, but y'all just cut the SNAP funding. Cut the crap. But anyway, so that's the next move, right? I knew something was up with CBS when they settled that $16 million lawsuit with Trump over the 60 Minutes piece, where he literally sued because they interviewed his opposing candidate when he ran for office. He and Kamala were both invited to do a 60 Minutes interview. Kamala did hers. He didn't want to do his. And then he sued and got money. Like everybody has just been caving. And it's the craziest thing to me. But one of the things that always takes place when you're talking about these different regimes is taking over the media. People like to make fun of North Korea. When you see the lady with the robe on and the little roller things in her head, and she be over there talking about how America's so terrible and stupid and so on and so forth. Well, we ain't getting too far from that, to be honest. But the thing that I will say, it's very easy to influence a generation with what happens in our media. I'm going to flip the script here. One of the things that I've always said is, I think one of the reasons why I was always really into history is because in those 3 years when I lived in Italy, we didn't have traditional television. We only had one channel because I was in there in the mid 90s, right? We only had one channel to watch. It was AFN, American Forces Network. And this is a network that took the best of what was on all the networks and just put it in one channel. So, the only downside is sometimes a good show came on at like 2 a.m., but you're asleep. They have a window for the kids programming. Like the kids programming on TV came on between about 3 o'clock and maybe 4:30. And that was all the cartoons you got to watch until Saturday. So, if you missed that 3 o'clock to 4:30 window, no more cartoons for the rest of the day and nothing in the morning, because they have to take into account the stay-at-home moms. They have to take into account the parents that are gonna want to come home and watch the news. But I say all that to say, one of the things about that channel is they did not have traditional advertising. We never saw like a Fruit Loops commercial. We never saw a commercial for Skechers or Furby. All of the ads that were on TV were like either self-help ads or something that was informational, like something that would teach you. And one of the things that I've always said that I really do think should happen with children's programming is, in my personal opinion, if I ever did work at like the FCC and was in charge of some stuff like that, personally, networks like Nickelodeon, Disney, what else do the kids watch? Cartoon Network, I would have a stipulation where at least 20% of the advertisements that are aired have to be something educational. So when I was coming up, every commercial that I saw during that kids block hour they were teaching me the state capitals. I was taught how the potato chip was made. I was taught, that's where I first heard about it in Alvin Ailey. They had a whole commercial about Alvin Ailey and the dance thing, like, right? I learned about, what started the War of 1812. I learned about how in that same war of 1812, oddly enough, one of the saving graces in that war was that a tornado hit DC and pretty much wrapped up one of the battles, right? Just as the British were about to come in and do some damage, a tornado hit DC that day, right? So it was like all of these different things. I'd just be watching TV and I'd always learn something every time that I watched the kids show, because there was always some new fact that was being presented. You remember in the late 90s, that's when they started doing the different quarters. Each state had the different quarters, and there was like commercials that would just tell you like, oh, these are the 5 state quarters that are coming out in 1997, New Jersey, Delaware. Like you saw all these different things. And they used to even have these trivia commercials where, and it was kind of fun to do it as a family. The commercial would come on and it would be like, oh, this state is the 2nd largest producer of apples. And it would have like a ticker on there, like maybe 10 seconds. And maybe you're with your parents and everybody's trying to guess. And it's like, the answer is New York. And then bonus point, what's the number 1 state? You're like, Washington, right? That kind of stuff. But I say all that to say that I really do feel that that played a role into how I started to perceive a lot of things and how I approached history. I didn't see it as boring. I saw it as something that was kind of cool, or I saw it as something that made you excited to learn. Because I've always said, even as adults, we're supposed to always want to still keep learning. We don't know everything and we never will know everything, but you want to strive to know as much as you can. And I think when you lock into a mindset to stop learning, that's when you become very stagnant. That's when, and I think that's why the country's in the space that it's in now. So many people have chosen to stop learning. So many people have chosen to stop expanding themselves or looking at a bigger picture. People want to lock in and stay in a space of comfortability. And when you stay in that space and the world leaves you behind, now you're mad at everything because you feel like you're not being given a life that you should have had. And as you're watching people around you progress, now you feel some kind of way. So now you vote with rage and you vote with spite and you get behind different things because you think it's going to make your life better, when in reality, it's going to be the same nonsense. So I'm just saying, like, as far as like going back to this media conversation, in the same way that those cool little ads and everything like that could get me excited about learning, what do you think can happen to you as media if it's all propaganda? If it's all bought out by people who have a political agenda, right? Look what happened with Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They've been out for 50 plus years. They've had to shut down, and it's all politically motivated because they've lost all their funding. Understand that they help fund outlets like an NPR or a PBS, right? Outlets that are very unbiased. They just report the facts. But facts in this current era are seen as being too woke or seen as being the radical left. And so we must defund those different things. The saving grace is PBS will not be going off the air, but there will be some cuts to PBS. There will be a few shifts over at NPR, but you're just starting to see like a whole lot of things. And it goes into all the spaces. So they go after media. We've already seen that. We've seen what's been happening with them going after education. We're watching universities have to go into all kind of litigation with the Trump administration on what they're allowed to even teach. Since when are we going after what I call free will education? To me, college is free will education because you don't have to go to college. You get the choice and you're paying, right? You're paying. And in addition to that, it's because there's something that you want to expand your knowledge wealth bank on, right? And so now when you start dictating what free institutions can teach, that's what we're getting, right? That is what we're getting. And even the arts, right? Kennedy Center is going through it, right? You saw Orange Man take over the board at the Kennedy Center, and ever since then, ticket sales and stuff are down. Only 43% of the shows or tickets are being sold or sold out, right? Versus 93% just a year ago. You just saw the Washington National Orchestra has been there for, I think, 50 plus years. They are leaving the Kennedy Center because, again, even in that same conversation of like what I like to say is learning. The craziest thing in all of this with this whole anti-DEI, all that nonsense, is that on the flip side, we get to see just how incompetent those who thought they were the greatest thing since sliced bread really are. And so what I find very, very entertaining in all of this, even though it's still sad, right? You've watched all of these people either lose their jobs or get pushed out of positions and everything, all because it was the narrative of, oh, this is DEI, I didn't earn it, or it was quote racial quotas and blah, 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 and everything else like that. Right? White folks, y'all weren't even ready. This was y'all opportunity to show us just how great y'all were, since y'all swore that we took everything that y'all had, even though you already had everything. And you would have thought white America would have been ready to jump in and that the best of the best of the best would be in all these positions. But take a look at who's running everything and how everything is falling apart in almost every category where they put all of these unqualified people in these positions, right? Crazy. Look at our military. You got Pete Hegseth. Them South Park episodes are hilarious, by the way. You just got any and everything going under the sun. And mind you, these are supposed to be the best and the brightest. You got RFK in charge of healthcare, doing Lord knows what, just doing any and everything. right? With them vaccinations, parents, y'all better use some common sense. I would not listen to somebody who sounded like they swallowed a bunch of rocks telling me what's good for me, right? Understand that man swims in the Potomac and Anacostia River. Like nobody in their right mind does that. So I'm just letting you know. But y'all go ahead. Y'all keep getting your advice from a heroin addict about your health, right? But one of the things that they've done as far as the Kennedy Center with Trump's new board is that they wanted to focus on more Christian-oriented programming. And I do want to say that one of the interesting things in all of that is now we're seeing that this all of a sudden rise in the pushing of what you want to call Christian education or Christian anything. But the issue is none of this is rooted in Christianity. It's white nationalism, but they're using Christianity as what you call the piece to appeal to folks' moral compass. But this is not a group of people with any morality or any moral way of doing things, but they're using Christianity as a crutch. It's kind of like what I said about Turning Point USA. Everybody got mad when I said my 2 cents about Charlie Kirk, but I'm like, they realized they could latch onto religion and Christianity to spew all their anti-black and white nationalist talking points, and you just sprinkle some Jesus on the top, and people will run behind it. And that's exactly what happened, right? Literally using the Bible to justify why other groups of people should be oppressed, and folks ran behind it. And then when this man, he whatever, now all of a sudden you want him to be a saint. He deserves a square in Venice next to St. Marco's Square. Okay, let's pause and read some comments, and then I want to go to this lawsuit out of Chesapeake, Virginia. All right. He said Sam Harris recently had someone on. I don't even know who that is, but okay. Sam Harris recently had someone on arguing that racism against Black people is a nonsense ideology. Can I also say, and like I said, folks will build them platforms. You're gonna see a whole lot more of this, but I have tried really hard, but it is very hard because sometimes you just got to drag some folks, right? I've tried very hard to not platform folks that don't need them, right? But I get what you're saying. Like you have some folks who they know exactly what's up, but it's their brand, it's their clout. They're gonna do whatever to expand and rage bait. This is the era of rage bait. You want to get on, piss everybody off. Well, even Facebook, right? People who have like verified Facebook accounts, they'll make all those annoying posts on purpose to get everybody to argue while they collect a check. Same thing with all the platforms. Like this, it's the same thing with these podcasts, right? Said, don't forget the reparations for the January 6ers. They even getting a check for breaking the law. Imagine that. Somebody said, why didn't Elon find all the fraud with those? And I don't know, because they wasted $28 billion doing it. Yeah, and there was no fraud. That's the reality. The one thing I will say, I'll leave it alone. I don't feel like shaking that table tonight. Okay. Let's see. Somebody said, where else are we going with here? They want to eliminate public schools as well. Yep. And we've been talking about that for years here too, right? The attack on public education and the idea of wanting to privatize everything. Because when you have tens of millions of children who need to be educated, there's money to be made if you could privatize it all, in the same way that there could be billions if you could privatize the U.S. Postal Service, which is exactly why they have that stupid law where the U.S. Postal Service must be able to afford to pay the pensions of their employees for the next 70 years. The problem with that is that's including pensions for people who haven't even been born yet. And then you wonder why the U.S. Postal Service is always almost out of money, right? They know exactly what they're doing. And there's that. Somebody said fake Christianity like never before. For a lot of these folks, their God is actually whiteness, to be honest. Really is. Like it's I'm gonna leave it alone. Okay. Going to this next video, ladies and gentlemen, because again, I want to go back to the conversation of cause and effect. And I also want to go back to the conversation of how history often repeats itself. So I have a quick video for you guys, and then we're going to chat. All right, let's actually get the video on. All right, here we go.
She gave me a C-section, done a DNC on me for some reason. But it's like ever since I got the DNC, I've been having My bad. Probably told my nurse to.
Nikki Murray is one of the now more than 600 women suing Chesapeake Regional Medical Center in connection to healthcare fraud tied to irreversible hysterectomies, improper sterilizations, and other medically unnecessary surgeries on hundreds of women performed by former Chesapeake doctor Javed Perwaiz. Perwaiz has been in a federal prison since 2021, serving a 59-year-long sentence. Last week, more than 500 women filed a lawsuit against Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, where Perwaiz performed those procedures. Since the original filing, more than 100 more women have come forward, including Chantel Boone.
No, I do not have a uterus. Immediately, early 30s went into straight menopause, night sweats, hormonal mood swings, just feeling depressed, and I lost my husband. So when you think about starting over, I don't have that option to do so if I wanted to.
Boone was one of the women added to the lawsuit this week. She unknowingly received an unnecessary hysterectomy from Perwaiz in 2017 and can no longer have children. I sat down with medical malpractice attorney Anthony DiPietro again, and he tells me the lawsuit now names 5 Chesapeake Regional Medical Center CEOs, up from the 3 that were named in the original lawsuit.
How did more CEOs get named as defendants?
The CEOs of CRNC knew for decades what Perwaiz was doing, but instead of protecting patients, they wanted to just protect their bottom line and their profits.
Last week, a spokesperson from Chesapeake Regional Medical Center gave News 3 a statement in response to the lawsuit saying that Perwaiz was never an employee of Chesapeake Regional Healthcare and the hospital staff did not know about his actions.
The emotional abuse, the physical stuff that I go through, I'm not supposed to be going through what I'm going through this early.
In Chesapeake, I'm Erin Holly, WTKR News 3.
All right. Okay. All right. So, again, the conversation of cause and effect. What's crazy is we've talked about this before, but not this specific story. And if you pay attention to history, this is a cycle that is repeating itself because we've talked about what happened in North Carolina between 1955 and 1974, where you had 7,000 Black women who were all sterilized by their healthcare providers. All right. And I think what people need to think about in this story is when you randomly just give a woman a hysterectomy, she can no longer have children. You've taken out all the reproductive organs. And so one of the things that was happening when we talk about what happened with North Carolina was there was a whole eugenics board. And their goal was to cut down on what you call the birth rate of Black children. And the way that they did it was by attacking Black women. Black women may go to the hospital to give birth, and how a lot of these 7,000 ended up getting these hysterectomies. And I'm talking about North Carolina, not the Chesapeake thing, was maybe there's a girl who is, underage who gives birth. She gives birth at 16 or 17. And what they would end up doing is giving a procedure after she gave birth. They give the hysterectomies, or they would take out the reproductive organs. And none of these girls could ever have children again. And at the same time, they did it without the consent or the knowledge of those girls or those young women or their families, right? And so you're seeing almost the same thing happen 50 years later. And so when I say that idea of being proactive and not just reacting to everything, but always being 10 steps ahead and recognizing and knowing how things go in this country, this is kind of what we're talking about. Because for these 4 women, imagine, as a man, I can only imagine so much. I guess as a man, it would be like, well, vasectomies you can undo. But I guess as a man, it would be like, no, you just chop them off and now you can't have children. Like that's the experience for like a woman who, again, if she wanted to have a family, she no longer has that option. Not to any fault of her own, but because you had these crazy, creepy doctors and everybody doing a bunch of different things and greed and racism and everything else, and it becomes normalized. And again, these 2 aren't even the only examples when we're talking about what's happening in Virginia and what's happening in North Carolina. It's happened in so many different realms and so many different spaces. Even, oddly enough, in this modern era, some of those women who were in the ICE detention camps during the first Trump administration were also sterilized. I don't think we talk about that enough either. Like when I tell you, there are some evil people in this world. And that's why I say nothing is ever really isolated. Everything affects everybody to some extent. And it's not to say that we're supposed to be everybody's mule, but you need to keep your ear to the street. You're right. You kind of keep your eye to what's going on around you. Because as soon as we can just understand, we can never get comfortable. Even in, let's just say, I don't know, everybody goes out and everybody protests and fights, and I don't know, they win the midterms, and say there's just a whimsical dream era of greatness that comes, and we get political candidates that aren't bought out and aren't full of crap and aren't just married and tied to APAC and all that other stuff like that, right? And everything just starts aligning, and everybody's pay increases, and the cost of housing is reasonable, and you don't have to pay $6,100 to get a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan anymore. You can get like all of that. Even if we had all of that and the price of eggs went down and everything else and cars weren't expensive, you still got to keep your guard up, because any minute now there's somebody who's mad about all of that, who's going to actively work to take all that apart and shut it down, right? You got to understand, when Obama got in both times, the amount of rage that existed just seeing Black joy pissed people off. It didn't even matter what he was going to do. Just seeing Black people celebrate and cry and hug and just feel like they got a little piece of something, even if it was just the symbolism, that was too much for some folks. And they actively worked to make sure it would never happen again, right? That's where we're at. And so I just need folks to kind of, again, understand there's foolery everywhere. And again, this is a 2026 story. You would think this is something that happened in the 1900s, but in the early 1900s, but this is recent. In the era of social media where everything can get exposed, this still happened. To the point where you got 600 women suing. All right, let us go to Venezuela, shall we? I'm going to kind of merge some of these. Oh, by the way, speaking of history, I meant to shout this out before. I used to have this in my description on my video. I think I pulled it, but I'll put it back. Because I do know that, yeah, when we're talking about education and stuff, one of the things that we know is getting the whacking is Black history. One of the services that I did use at my center was Black History 365. I'm just going to share my screen really quick. Right. And so if you go to their website, like blackhistory365education.com, I liked it because it covers a bunch of different things. They have a whole textbook, right? It's a whole K-12 curriculum in the States. They have, all kind of multimedia related things that the kids can use to learn with. And the lessons are also tailored to age group. So there's things that are appropriate for like an 8-year-old to understand. And there's things that like a 16 or 17-year-old can understand. And like with it, there's like thousands of artifacts in the book and stuff. Like, you just get so much more. And they do a great job of, like, again, painting the full picture, the idea of cause and effect. That's pretty much it. Let's see what else is on here. I'm not going to spend all day on this thing, but I guess that was it. I was trying to see where they have because in some of your school districts, they actually do teach. Do they have it on here? Trying to see if they have the part. Yeah, so they do teach this in 420 different school districts. So depending on where you're at, right here, some of you guys might want to screenshot this and see if this is available. I don't want to share too much because some racist person might be on here watching and they about to yank these out the school. So we're going to stop talking about that. But again, definitely check them out. They definitely, again, because again, I say you can't get everything from the school. So even as a parent, if you feel that maybe you aren't the best teacher, and that is okay, utilize the resources that are there. I think one of the things we also have to start thinking about and understanding is that in this fight, everybody has a certain role. Everybody can't be everything at once. Sometimes people will say, Calvin, well, you always got this, but what's your solution? My job is to teach, right? That's my gift. I can teach, I can inspire. And hopefully that inspires the next person to go and do whatever they got to do, right? Everybody has to have their lane. I can't be the teacher and the activist and the fighter and the chef and watch the kids. Everybody got to have whatever part that they do. My lane, I like to teach. I like to inform. That's my favorite thing to do. And hopefully people utilize whatever they get to go and push into whatever is next. Everybody has to find where their lane is. And so again, if you're a parent who maybe you may not feel like you're the best teacher, that book and that service has some really great resources. And again, this is why I also say be in community. Kind of start finding those different people who could do a little something here and there. So think back to even when we were in the pandemic and folks had to be in the house, how parents would get together, and because you had all these kids who were doing school on the computer or on the tablet and everything, and every parent couldn't watch, you saw some parents who started creating shifts like, okay, well, I actually have to go to work, but my best friend doesn't, so they can work from home and they can have a pod of 5 or 6 kids together having a classroom experience. Because think about the experience of what it must have been like for a kindergartner during the COVID era, where there was no physical school that they could go into because people were in the house. And the idea of expecting a 5-year-old to look at a screen for 6 to 8 hours and expect them to learn, when in reality, they're also not getting the social aspect of education, because one piece of education is also interaction with other people. And so that idea of some parents just coming together in community and having 5 or 6 kids together, all of that is community. It goes back to when we even talked about Prince Edward County schools in the state of Virginia, when they didn't want to integrate. So they decided to just close the entire school district, and all the white families had money and went to private schools. Black folks said, okay, we don't, okay, cool. Churches opened up their basements. Aunties and uncles opened up their houses, and all the black kids who did not, because again, the school system was closed for 2 years. They even canceled the sports program. No school. We ain't going to school with them N-words. So, okay, black folks had to collectively get together. And like I said, churches were doing what they needed to do. When you go to so-and-so's class, or auntie this person or uncle this person. In order for this to work, you don't have to move in community, right? And that's why I say understand your lane. And community doesn't always have to be, it doesn't have to be this like top tier officer or something. You don't have to be the wealth of knowledge. You don't have to be the person that, you know, is the top of anything. Like community can be something as simple as think back. Okay, this is a very millennial example. Everybody had the candy lady in their neighborhood when they were kids. Now, yeah, maybe candy wasn't the best thing, and probably that's why some of us got diabetes and stuff now. But however, the amount of joy that would bring to the kids in the neighborhood on when they got out of school, where there was the candy lady. Now, when I was in Savannah, there was the ice pops lady. She had the cups of the Kool-Aid with the wooden stick in the cups. You could go and get them for, I think, like 50 cents when I was little, right? Stuff like that. That is being in community. You are watching and making sure that the kids are good. And again, when you're bringing joy to the children, they're not going to be outside scrapping and racking because they're trying to get their candy or they're trying to get their ice pops. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes your gift is you can cut hair. So you know, a lot of times you see at the beginning of the school year, you see a lot of black men do the like free haircuts thing, or barbershops do that. That is being in community. You see a lot of people that do a lot of the outreach when it comes to those who are unhoused and making sure that people have like toiletries and stuff like that. Like being in community has so many different layers. It's not just being the activist or leading the march. It's where can you fall in, right? Maybe as simple as it is, maybe you just have a next door neighbor that is a senior citizen, and sometimes the HOA gives them a little bit too much smoke about how tall their grass is. And your job is you just cut your neighbor's grass. That is being in community. That's all it is. It's not rocket science, but I'm telling you, it gets us so much further along than when we spend all day trying to outdo each other or be in competition. That ain't my problem. Y'all figured out. I got mine. The hell with y'all. It is what it is. And so it's understanding that. It's understanding also holding each other to a higher standard. I always say this too. I feel like also being in community means that even with our black business owners, sometimes when they're on some BS, you tell them from a place of love, listen, I'm trying to support you, but in order for this to work, you're going to have to do this. Like this how this is going to have to go. I enjoy eating at your restaurant, but damn, I mean, I love the music too, but can you just turn it down just a little tiny bit? Because you always put my seat right next to the DJ booth, and I'm trying to cut my food, my whole table shaking, right? And I love that the servers are having a good time, but I couldn't find my server because they over there turning up at the bar, right? So being in community is saying, hey, I'm going to still, you know, come to your business, but I want to hold you to a higher standard. If you can't meet that standard, I got to find somewhere else to go because there's another spot next down, you know, all of that. That's all I'm saying. What was we supposed to get to? Oh, we're supposed to get to Venezuela. Okay. All right, where are we going with this thing? Lord, there's so much stuff going on here. Do I want? I think I'm gonna bypass. Where do I want to go? Give me 1 second. I just want to. Okay, so with the Venezuela stuff, what I found very interesting. First of all, we've had a lot happening internationally, right? You know, Orange Man, they want to get Greenland. You know, they done went and bombed Nigeria, then bombed Venezuela. This is why I said there's no limit to where this is going. We don't know what we're getting. Every day is a new extremity, right? Just wild. We're now at the place where even the alliances that existed are all on shaky ground. NATO is kind of up in the air. Now, Orange Man is talking all this trash about, oh, he can dismantle NATO. And I'm like, you realize if you get rid of NATO, all of these military bases will close too, right? One of the reasons why the U.S. has been able to move the way that they move is because we have 800 plus bases around the world. It is very hard to get into war with the United States on their own turf because first of all, you can't even make it out of your own country half the time because we got bases everywhere and rockets ready. It's always been like that. Now, let's say all these bases close. All right. First of all, when you're talking about even the safety of our troops that are in all these different bases overseas, isolation does not quite work when, again, let's say all these bases closed, NATO is done. In that moment where NATO says, y'all are done, we're out of here with y'all, anybody who wants to swarm in or do whatever, this is go time, because this means that all of these countries in the European Union and all, they no longer have these alliances and these covenants where, one gets attacked, we're all, one band, one sound, none of that. Free for all, everybody go for it. That's one thing. Now, I don't really want to get into all that because then there's a conversation of imperialism as well. That's the bigger conversation. But with Venezuela, I was minding my business, and then I see that we start bombing Venezuela, and the reasoning was because of drugs. I said, God, I really want us to get out of this boogeyman narrative of always doing everything. And what's so funny, we had already talked about Venezuela on the last 2 lives. Before any of this happened, we already knew they want the oil. We kept saying that. Please go back to the last 2 lives we did. We said, and we did this together. We did our homework. We said, boom, they want the oil, and this is why, because this is how much they have, so on and so forth. And now it's to the point where the administration doesn't even care. They'll tell you, yeah, we're trying to get the oil. We're gonna go in there, we're gonna take over their oil and blah, 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 blah. Only for the oil folks to be like, we don't know if we want to invest in Venezuela because they got a lot going on. There's political unrest, the infrastructure is not there. We're going to have to invest hundreds of billions of dollars. We're not trying to. Now, people kind of took that as Trump wasted his time, and now look where he's at. I saw that as all of those oil companies telling the Trump administration, we'll invest, but you got to clean things up over there first, which to me sounds like another invitation to do more military intervention, which we don't need to be doing. And so this is going to be an interesting time. And then, Orange Man got mad. So now he's already, picking the companies that he has smoke for. So right now he's pissed off with ExxonMobil. I want to go to that article really quick. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because the oil companies to me are still terrible anyway. Trump threatens to block ExxonMobil from Venezuela after CEO calls country uninvestable. U.S. president says company is playing too cute after CEO responds skeptically to his push for oil investment after disposing Nicolas Maduro. Donald Trump has said he might block ExxonMobil from investing in Venezuela after the oil company's chief executive called the country uninvestable during a White House meeting last week. Darren Woods told the U.S. president that Venezuela would need to change its laws before it could be an attractive investment opportunity. During the high-profile meeting on Friday with at least 17 other oil executives, and that was an interesting meeting too. That's when he got up and started looking out the window for some random reason. Trump had urged the group to spend $100 billion to revitalize Venezuela's oil industry in a meeting less than a week after U.S. forces captured and removed Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from power in a brazen overnight raid. I'm gonna fast forward. He said, I didn't like Exxon's response, Trump told reporters on Air Force One on his way back to Washington on Sunday. I'll probably be inclined to keep Exxon out. I didn't like the response. They're playing too cute. Exxon didn't immediately respond. Anything else in here worth talking about? Okay, I'm gonna get back to actually what. So the other thing I'm gonna say, because a lot of folks wanted to utilize what's happening in Venezuela and say, well, the United States is justified because, they got crazy man over there too. Here's my response to that. Yes, two things can be true at once, but the United States has some nerve. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. Like the idea of thinking you can just go in somebody's country and snatch up their leader and then try them in the United States with charges that would not have jurisdiction. And how? Okay. Sometimes you just got to laugh. Like, what the f is going on out here? That was wild to me. Because then I was like, well, if that's the case, can somebody come over here and snatch him up and take Pam Bondi too and Carolyn, take all of them? Somebody, I won't fight you. Come. Go do what y'all got to do. That's all I'm saying. But it's just a wild, wild time here. And I think with Orange Man, he is enjoying this because he gets to kind of push the threshold of how far he can go. Because, again, they recognize nobody really wants to go to war with the United States. Nobody's really trying to do that in the same way that nobody's trying to go to war with China or North Korea. I would say Russia, but they're getting whacked in Ukraine right now. Nobody wants war, period. None of us do, right? Anybody with common sense understands that when we get into wars, get into anything, the people who actually suffer are the civilians, the people who, even those who are in the military, right? Let's be honest. A lot of people don't join the military because they want to go kill somebody. A lot of people join the military because it was a financial opportunity for them to have a come up in life. And there are careers in the military where, you know, there's some folks who go in the military, they're never going to go to combat. They're doing IT stuff, or they work in the news station for the military stuff, or they're in the band, or they work at the mess hall, or they're a doctor, or they're a therapist. And so people look at the military as a career option with the hopes that there's never going to be a war. And so this idea of constantly just throwing all of our troops around as collateral to this man's ego is crazy, and it's wild to me. And so, again, the United States has now been disrupting what you call, this used to be called the quiet era, which I don't believe it was, because it was maybe quiet for the United States, but not for everybody else. Like, we've seen what's been happening globally. But again, the idea of the United States constantly just shaking up everything. Our alliances are all over the place. We keep pulling out of every treaty you can think of. You know, they also were talking about Panama, because he wants the Panama Canal too. And what he wants to do, in my opinion, is he wants America to not only be a superpower, but literally just own an entire hemisphere, right? And that's where even this whole Greenland thing comes in. I'm like, you just can't take another, like, we've already offered $100 million for Greenland way back in the 1920s. And Denmark was like, no, we're good. We're going to do our own thing with Greenland, right? Sometimes I'm speechless sometimes. That's why I was enjoying my time off. I was like, y'all can stress about it, because I'm going to enjoy my week. Like, I don't have time for this crap. Too much going on. All right, I'm going to pause and read some comments, and then I think I'm going to squeeze in at least one more major topic, and then I think we'll call it a night. I think I got most of what I need to talk about anyway. All right, let's see here. What up, Harold? Somebody says it pays to be hated. Somebody said Chesapeake Regional is the worst. Both of my grandparents died there. I'm sorry to hear that. Somebody said, poor woman, I hope they sue the S word out of these people. It's just so much going on. And that's why I keep saying, like, observe, but don't overindulge, right? Because once you really start locking in too much, and every day that you wake up, you doom scroll and you read every article and everything. I don't know how people sleep at night. Like, I have to check out. Like, I'm Calvin Michaels right now, but when I log this thing out and go lay down, I go back to being Michael B. Okay, and that's it. And then I don't come back into Calvin Michaels land unless I'm doing some promotion on Instagram or I'm on the channel. Like, I have to get this in doses. I'm not about to sit here and die of hypertension at a young age because everything is stressing me out. But there's that. Oh, wow. Calvin, the air quotes, Brett Favre's case started this week. No one's talking about it. Please talk about the biggest fraud case for food set. The fact that this is still going, $2 million. Let's do this. I'm going to table it and come back to it because I need to actually go research what's happening with the facts. But remember, Brett Favre, was a part of a whole scheme where there was millions of dollars that was supposed to go to the actual people with the food assistance program. And instead, somehow it went into his pockets for like speaking engagements, a whole new volleyball gym for his daughter because she was an athlete. And what I found so funny is Brett Favre is one of the main ones that's always, fighting against any element of resistance when it comes to what people have been protesting about. You want to sit here and pretend to be all upstanding, and you're over here scamming and stealing the money from people in Mississippi, of all places. The nerve. I'm gonna come back to it. So somebody hold me to that. I'll make sure to address it at some point. But I need to actually look at the details because I don't know what has changed since the initial accusations from, I want to say 2 years ago. Thank you. Healthy Green Lifestyles. So what do you think about Burkina Faso? Are you talking about with them telling France where the hell they can go and why France will no longer be affecting their economy? Listen, where I stand, I do not support colonization. And I feel like every country that is currently colonized deserves to have their own agency, deserves to be their own their own sovereign nation. Their money and their commerce should not be intertwined with another country that gets to determine or decipher what it is that they're allowed to have. That's one of the reasons why, if there is one country I always go to bat for, is always Haiti. And I say that because people always blame France, but I'm like, the United States also plays a major role into what has happened with Haiti, whether in two realms, where one, we took over their national bank in the 1900s a few times. And in addition to that, we stay, pretty much putting in place their leaders that are usually puppets to the United States and to foreign powers, specifically Western foreign powers. And so because we indirectly, not we, but the United States in general, still has their hands very tied into what happens with Haiti. I'm always going to go hard for them as well. But no, I believe all of these countries, I want to see all these countries fight and get theirs. All of these countries, like, listen, the continent of Africa, and I think there's other channels that probably explain this a lot better because this is more their bailiwick. Listen, these countries are going to have to tell the United States, Russia, China, France, Germany, Portugal, all these places to fall back. Give us what is rightfully ours. I think when we just talk about how much has been exploited from this continent and have made so many people rich while the very people that live there get nothing, it's effed up. So I support anybody who's going against the grain and saying we've had enough. Good for you. All right. Somebody said China and Russia will come for America. God forbid. But I will say, I think the saving grace in that conversation is because everybody knows what the other can do. I don't think anybody's ever really going to really try and push that button because it pretty much would be the end of everybody, right? So you just have to cross your fingers and hope. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's never really been a high escalation between the United States, Russia, and China. They'll talk trash. They'll lightly poke the bear. You know, they'll do a little military operation out in the ocean real quick. But as far as like just going all out, absolutely not. And you know what's really effed up? Even with the whole Ukraine thing, look at how that went down. And Putin was like, and if anybody jumps in, I'm whacking everybody. And so what ends up happening? Okay, the U.S. is like, well, we won't send troops, but we'll send money to help them fight, right? And Russia's like, well, fine. Well, we're going to send our troops and stuff to go fight and blow up your weapons. And so it's like you're having all these different proxy wars around the world, but the people who got beef aren't actually fighting. And again, the people in most of these countries don't have beef with each other because none of us know each other. The beef is with the leadership. That's why I said, listen, you put what's his name from China and Putin and Trump and whoever else, all of them can go in a room with box cutters and go for it. Don't bring us in it. Like, that's why I think war just makes no sense. You, as the leadership, got whatever nonsense you're going, oh, freaking Netanyahu's crazy behind. Like, all of this is like the people are collateral, right? You got a bunch of lunatics calling the shots, a bunch of lunatics who have their hand on the trigger. And they're never really going to have to experience anything, but everybody else around them will. And I think that's why even our current president is so gung-ho about always trying to start stuff. Because why are we bombing Nigeria? Talking about Christians, please. And they had nothing to do with no Christians, right? Yeah, now you're bombing Venezuela. Like, it is. Get us out of this era. Hurry up. Crazy. I'm not taking no bets on no World War III because we don't need no World War III. I'd rather y'all just go ahead and assassinate the leadership and leave the rest of us alone before anybody does that. Anyway, okay, moving on. The last thing, I guess I will finish. I'll do this. I have a few lighter topics, but I'm going to do this one major topic, and then depending on how long this takes, I'll just kind of open the floor because I know I haven't been on for like 38 days, so we'll try to get a few questions and then we'll call it a day. And you know, I do have some other content for you guys. And by the way, the next podcast, I'm going to push into the week after next just because I haven't had enough time to finish it. Plus, the last one, if you heard it, took me down bad. Lord. It took, you know how many takes I had to do to get that podcast episode out? And I still could not hold it together at the part that, if you listen, you know what I'm talking about. I could not hold it together. I was so mad at myself. And I was like, you know what? That's what makes it genuine and that's what makes it real. So y'all got to get a side of me that you don't normally get. So that was that last episode. So I see that, Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers have been getting whacked because of some of the comments that they've had about Jasmine Crockett and everything with the election there. I just want to say this. This is real. Actually, I'll read an article real quick and then we'll go. Let's do that before I say my 2 cents. All right, here we go. Y'all know I got some reading ready. This isn't a long article, so this is quick. All right. Bowen Yang, Matt Rogers apologize for discouraging donations to Democrat running in Texas. Comedians Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers are walking back their comments about Texas Rep. Jasmine Crockett after encouraging fans not to donate to her Senate campaign. In an episode posted on January 7th, the co-host waded into political territory by debating Democrat Party strategy for 2028 and Crockett's electability. Don't waste your money sending to Jasmine Crockett. Do not do it. You're going to waste your money. Roger said sharing he donated to Sarah Gideon, the Maine representative who unsuccessfully challenged Susan Collins' Senate seat in 2020. Yang agreed. After fan backlash, Rogers and Yang posted apologies to their Instagram stories January 10th. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, anyway, to the points that actually matter. What I will say, what I found very interesting is, for some reason, when certain folks run for office, they seem to get a whole lot more smoke than other groups of folks. And I keep seeing a pattern, if you catch my drift. And what I find very, very interesting in this current climate, especially since they brought up Maine in that article, is I want to know why I'm not seeing all this smoke for Graham Planter, who's running for a seat in Maine as a senator. If you don't know who Graham Planter is, Graham Planter used to have a Nazi tattoo that he had to cover up once he decided to get into politics and run as a Democrat. And it's interesting because everybody's talking about, oh, you have electability and blah, 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 blah. And I find it very interesting that the Nazi gets less smoke than the person who's already been in the House and has actually has done a pretty decent job at what she does. But for some reason, somehow she's unelectable. And I'm going to get into that in a second too as well. And so here's the other reality. And this is not to be a doom and gloom, but when we talk about a place like Texas, right? Texas doesn't really do anything blue. They haven't in a while. I'll get back to that. However, if we're talking about the Senate races in Maine and the Senate races in Texas, the best shot is currently in Maine. So I would think that everybody would put their focus on Maine and getting a great candidate in there to get Susan Collins up out of there, right? And so you're telling me that one of the main candidates that has a shot is a fucking Nazi, but y'all want to all of a sudden do this purity test with Jasmine Crockett, where again, now this is what I want to say about Texas, right? I think when it comes to somebody like Jasmine Crockett, anyway, I think a lot of people want to put her in a place that they approve of. They don't think she's digestible enough because she's too transparent or she's very on the nose with how she says things. And my reality is, because people keep saying, well, Texas won't put her in. And I'm like, well, Texas hasn't put a Democrat in since '94 anyway. This actually might be the best time to shake the table because clearly y'all keep running these safe white candidates and they're not winning. But I also want to say this is only the primary. The people of Texas will decide what it is that they want. There's a whole Democratic primary. Let them finish out the primary. So I found it very interesting that the minute she announced that she was running, everybody came in droves to try to take this lady out, especially when you saw like white leftists and they started having the purity test. Because for some reason, when it comes to black candidates, we always got to have the purity test, the element of perfection, as you got this bullshit that's happening right now that nobody has a problem with. Well, that's the way things are. This is the people learning the lesson, and now the people have spoken. Okay, if you say so. But anyway, like I was saying, let the people of Texas decide what they want. Why are we seeing celebrities who have no correlation to what's happening in the state of Texas talking about the Texas primary? We're just talking the primary, not even the general election for the Senate. I understand that when we get to the Senate, it does affect all of us because the Senate gets to vote and pick and choose on where we stand. But my reality is this. If it got down to the wire, I will sleep a whole lot better knowing that Jasmine Crockett is in a Senate seat versus another Republican in the state of Texas. That's just how I see it. But with that being said, the reality is I think we're not even looking at the bigger picture. Why does Jasmine have to run for Senate? Because we saw what happened with the redistricting. That should have been the bigger conversation where you watched an entire corrupt setup to possibly redistrict and set up things so that Republicans can have more seats in the House. And then Jasmine loses her district because her district no longer exists. So now she's like, well, I'm not done yet. And I don't want to push my opponents out because, we're not going to do a whole swap out because that doesn't give us more power if we're fighting for our party. We need additional representation. So yeah, I'll run for Senate. So that's fine with me. But my thing is this. Like I said, they have been losing with white safe candidates for years. You lost with Beto O'Rourke, and I felt like he had the best shot. It didn't happen. Wendy Davis, you lost with her. You lost with Chris Bell. You lost with Lupe Valdez. Now, that was the one anomaly. That was the Hispanic lady. You lost with Bill White. You keep losing with all these folks. Y'all have not had somebody win a statewide election as a Democrat since 1994 with Robert Kruger. So my thing is this, and I think there's two things that people need to focus on, right? Because really, when it comes to voting, if you're paying attention to just what happens politically in certain states, the numbers haven't really shifted with what demographic votes for what. Normally, every election cycle, when we're talking statewide elections, whether it's for the Senate or for the governor's race in Texas, normally the Democratic candidate loses, and they normally get anywhere between about 40 and 44% of the vote, and the rest goes to the Republican candidate. It's always been that way. And so my thing is this. maybe the focus, instead of constantly trying to, and I think this is where Kamala messed up in her election, when she started trying to pull in what she thought would be the Republican voter that has a little bit of common sense, and she started campaigning with Liz Cheney and all that. I'm like, all right, Kamala, I'm gonna agree with you on that one. Okay, you realize Liz voted with Orange Man 90% of the time. You're losing the plot here. You were doing all right. You're losing the plot. Stay focused. Anyway, personally, to me, I think where the focus needs to be is we have a huge segment of people who don't show up to vote, right? And I think what makes Jasmine stand out, and this is just my opinion, is that she is not a conventional politician with regard to how she relays her messages. And I do think that she does speak a language of the people. And I want to say this to some of the Black folks who like to hop onto respectability. One of the things that I always have an issue with is there's some people in our collective who have a thing where there's only a certain kind of Black person that they approve of. And so with somebody like Jasmine, they don't like her because, oh, she's ghetto, or she got her nails, or she got her weave. And I don't want that representing me. And then y'all be dead silent with all the nonsense that's happening now. I don't want to hear it. But the point that I want to make is, because we already see the continued pattern of how the state of Texas tends to vote in every statewide election, maybe this just might be the opportunity where you might be able to get some buzz and get some people off their behinds to actually show up, because finally there's a candidate that doesn't fit the mold of everybody else, that seems a little bit different, where the words match, the actions match the words, right? And the other thing is too, the goal really is just to get within that margin of error. That's with a lot of elections, right? Where it's, you don't have to win by a landslide. You just got to win within that margin of error. Think back to like Michigan in 2016. The fact that Hillary lost Michigan by 11,000 votes goes to show, because again, she didn't campaign in the state. She thought she had it in the bag, and Michigan said, surprise, no, right? 11,000 votes. That's all it took for Orange Man to get Michigan. They could have easily convinced 11,000 people to show up and just check the box. You just got to get them to check the box. So going back with somebody like a Jasmine, I think for her, because she does speak a language that I think is a bit more relatable. Now, we understand there's going to be a lot of folks who are just not voting for her just because of who she is. But my point is this: Texas is already not in play to begin with. So since it's already not in play, you might as well shake the table. Maine is in play. Maine is where y'all need to have your focus. Maine is where there's a really, really strong possibility that you can pick up a Democrat Senate seat. Texas is going to be a steep uphill battle. But like I said, in that same realm, there have been candidates who, again, went against the grain, may not have necessarily been the most popular when they started out, but they were able to win or get that kind of leverage because they were able to pull the demographic of people who tend to not show up anyway because they feel like the system is some BS to begin with, right? I'm not the biggest Bernie person because that tribe of his works my effing nerves. However, Bernie, at a point in time, was able to speak a language that got a lot of people excited about voting. And a lot of people voted who never voted before because they believed in what it was that he was pushing. Same thing with a Barack Obama. A lot of people voted for the first time when he ran because there was something that excited a lot of people. Now, am I saying she's the perfect candidate? I don't know, right? I don't live in Texas. It's going to be up to the Texas voters. But the fact that so many people have shown up to automatically just count her out, and I'm like, not to be that person, I think the person that she's running against is a very safe candidate, and I don't see that candidate as somebody that's going to excite anybody to show up, to be honest. I'd be perfectly fine with him in the Senate. I think he would do a great job. But again, the United States now is in a space where people like, it's like people move with extremities and almost if you come off too safe and too bland, they don't want anything to do with you, right? And I just think in this moment, that girl got some fight in her. That's why I do have a respect for her. She will call stuff out if she sees it. She ain't afraid to like shake the table. That's where I'm at with it. And so watching this random Asian man, this white man, all of a sudden tell people not to donate. It's one thing to say, well, I'm not really, I don't like that candidate. This is the candidate that I like. But to actively go out of your way and say, don't even donate to them. Now, what is the goal here, right? Because again, Texas most likely is going to move just like how Texas has been moving. But in this moment in time, there is a hair of a chance that maybe things could possibly shift. So I think it makes more sense to get that shift with somebody who isn't the conventional anything, right? Somebody who finally, like, again, speaks a language that most people can understand, speaks everything in layman's terms, doesn't, she's not bought out by AIPAC and all this other stuff. She doesn't have AIPAC money, right? There's none of that. So it's kind of like, I don't know what folks want here. For some reason, when certain Black candidates run, there's the purity test. But then when there's others, everything is okay. You just keep going with it. Now, y'all, I'm not about to argue with y'all on Jasmine because, like I said, Jasmine's all right with me. Y'all can argue about whatever. But I said what I said. That's how I feel. I also don't live in Texas, so my opinion is not going to make a difference between today and tomorrow in the state of Texas. But I do think that people in politics right now, your goal, because you already know how most people are going to move, why don't you try to pull in that demographic that doesn't normally vote, right? In addition to the fact that we know that you still got to fight all the voter suppression tactics. You know, they're doing everything in their power to make it harder to vote in 3rd Ward, right? Or in that 3rd district. They're making it harder to vote in District 118. Like, they're doing what they do because they know that, again, Texas continues to get blacker and browner by the year. And this is an anomaly year because, hey, a lot of people in that Latino demographic, because again, like I said, the only thing that community really has in common when we talk about the Hispanic community is that they speak Spanish, but politically they all move kind of different. But because we've seen the response to what's been happening with ICE and all the anti-immigrant conversations and stuff like that, Republicans don't have the same stronghold on the Latino/Hispanic community that they once had. There's going to be some that are going to jump ship. So that's why I was saying, if you're going to do this in that anomaly year where you were trying to get somebody excited, you got to get somebody who's exciting. And personally, I just think she carries more energy than the other guy. Now, if it gets to the primary, the other guy wins. Come on, Texas, push them through, because y'all listen, what happens in Texas when it comes to that Senate still affects all of us, because at the end of the day, the Senate represents everybody, right? So I feel like if there was a moment to shake the table, this is the time, right? At least for Texas in that Senate race. But like I said, Maine is the state that's in play. So one, y'all need to get Graham Planter out of there. Why do we have a freaking Nazi or former Nazi talking about, oh, I'm reformed, I changed my, no. You're not about to sit here and play in my face and paint her to be the worst thing ever on the planet, and then y'all rallying behind a damn Nazi. Y'all didn't learn from, what's his name out of Pennsylvania? What's the one in Pennsylvania that's getting on everybody's nerves now? The one that pulled out the gun on the black kids. And everybody, because damn it, y'all could have put what's his name in during that Pennsylvania primary. Dude with the locks. But again, you know how whiteness in this country works. They ain't want to put the black man in there. And y'all put what's his face in there. What is it? Fetterman, who's been in the way. And Fetterman is one step from being a Republican at this point. So, like, my thing is, white America, y'all keep claiming y'all got all the answers politically, and y'all keep dropping the ball every time. But I swear, y'all are so progressive till blackness comes in, and that whiteness jump right back out, and the real y'all comes out every single time. All right, that's the end of that. I will open the floor for a little bit before I call it a night. So yeah, that we'll see. What Texas will be an interesting watch. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I saw that she was running for Senate, I was like, ooh, that's gonna be a rough one. That's gonna be a tough sell, because Texas is red. And a lot of it has to do with gerrymandering and everything else, but Texas is red. So I feel like if you're trying to break that red, you better get somebody who can shake it up. And I think in this current era where a lot of places that were super red are shifting just because they're tired of the nonsense. And it might be the one time that they shift, because I think a lot of folks will temporarily shift just to get rid of this, but they're going to go back to what they normally do in another election cycle. 2026, 2028 might be the great hope where all of this gets pushed out. But we know how Americans tend to be, short attention spans. By 2030, they'll probably, if Democrats were to win the White House in 2028 and hold on to the House if they get it, or the Senate if they get it, all it takes is 2 years for everybody to act like they forgot everything and put Republicans right back in there. Like, I don't know, price of eggs. I don't know. So we shall see. All right. Anyway. By the way, can we also look at platforms too? I know they didn't look at this woman's platform or see what it was that she was trying to do. Now, I will say, I think advice for her, she's going to have to do more than just be anti-Trump. That's not going to be enough to get people behind her. But I feel like all these people had all these opinions about this lady and don't even know what the platform is. And we've seen that happen before with other candidates as well. Anyway. Somebody said, how is China still considered a superpower when 60% of their population is over 60 years old? They have the second highest GDP in the world. And so that's kind of what makes them that, in addition to the fact that just even population-wise, right? God forbid there's a war. The United States only has about 1.2 million people in our armed forces. They are a country of, I forgot how many, 1.4 billion. I forgot how large their army is, but, if it ever got down to the point where, God forbid, I don't even want to put it in the universe, but let's just say it got to that point, to the point where, okay, now you got to start drafting citizens and stuff. They have more people to lose than we do. They could just keep sending a wave of folks, right? That's kind of like what happened with Japan in World War II. Like towards the end of the war, Japan was down so bad they just started using whatever citizen they could grab, and even with the aircraft, the Air Force that they had, they didn't even have artillery anymore, and so a lot of the pilots just had to do suicide missions. They just fly the plane and crash into something. Like it was just throw anything at the wall to fight. We don't have enough throw anything at the wall people, but China does. So that's another thing to think about. But we're going to rebuke all of that because there's not going to be any kind of folks that y'all better use your words. Use your words. That's why we need more black folks in global politics. Black folks don't start nothing, won't be nothing. And right now, people in charge keep trying to start stuff with everybody. Like you can't fight you cannot start, because Trump even said the thing about, oh, if we have to, we'll start things in Iran and go to Iran because they're protesting. Why are we worried about Iran right now? Like, you can't start something with Iran, Greenland, Panama, Venezuela, Nigeria, still pissing off China because you're poking the bear about Taiwan, and you still got the stuff going on with Ukraine and the stuff going on with Russia. We can't be fighting 7 people at the same time. Have you ever gotten to fight with 7 people? I mean, I certainly haven't, but yeah. And I'm not going to listen. Now, let the they start talking about bringing the draft back. I was so happy I aged out, but I think they can still bring it back till 39, so maybe not. But yeah, y'all, we be going live from a jail cell because I am never taking a bullet for this country, ever. All right, Calvin, what is your thoughts on Bruno Mars song? I have not heard it yet. I'll listen to it. Well, I can't play it here. I'm gonna get flagged, but I haven't heard it yet. I gotta check it out. Let's see. Yes, exactly. This old boy has a Nazi tattoo, a whole Nazi tattoo, and nobody even knows this man's name. He's not even in the conversation. But y'all whacking her. That's okay. Jasmine's not taking any money from APAC. I also do want to say too, because I know a lot of times people like to use it. There's like sometimes you see that graphic with different candidates, and it'll show the politician like in black and white, but it's a red background, and it'll have a figure under, like I don't know, $30 million, and it'll say from Israel or whatever. A lot of times, what people don't understand as well is that that is sometimes that is not like a God, how do I explain it? Somebody explained this so perfectly, and now I'm gonna F it up if I attempt to do the same thing. Understand, I'm going to try this. Understand that little figure that people keep seeing on these memes is not like what you would call donation specifically from APAC to that candidate. Now, there is APAC money in some of those things, but like what I've seen is that a lot of times that's a combination of all of these different agencies or these different PACs or these just different movements. And sometimes that is not even money that is, okay, got it. People that independently raise money for a candidate without the candidate's, know-how or saying that's fine. Like think about like sometimes you'll see an ad. Here's an example. Let's say that I am running for office against Alan, right? Me and Alan are running for office. And let's say that Tyler Hackner likes Alan as a candidate so much that Tyler Hackner decides to spend $2 million to make an ad about how much Calvin Michaels sucks. And Alan has no clue about this ad that's coming out or whatever, or he has no correlation, no ties to it, right? And so Tyler Hackner will run his ad and just say, this ad is approved by the Tyler Hackner Commission for get Calvin Michaels out of here. Like when they do that little figure at the bottom and it shows, oh, this person took this much money from so on and so forth. A lot of times the language doesn't include that some of that money that is there has nothing to do with the actual candidate. It's also groups that fought for that candidate's cause. And so I think sometimes that gets lost in the sauce a little bit. I need to find who explained it because somebody else explained it way better than I just did. But anyway, let's see. Somebody said, yeah, Plant is going to be just another Fetterman. Like Fetterman, and you see Fetterman starting to move just like Cinema and the West Virginia guy. Same thing. Anyway, I've always said money needs to come out of politics anyway, unfortunately. Somebody says she's not ghetto, but she thinks we are. That's why she puts on the act. I don't think it's that at all. I don't even consider how she moves to be that. I just think she is transparent. She doesn't code switch. And I think we've gotten so comfortable with always trying to be digestible for everybody else that when we're just our authentic selves, then all of a sudden it's seen as being an act. And I saw a lot of folks try to say, well, yeah, she ain't that because she went to this school and she went to law school and everything else like that. She can still have a personality. Y'all want these people to be stoic and dry and bland. And then we get mad when people like speak in political circles and don't say anything and like just talk in circles and give us that political speech. And, think about every time you watch a candidate get put feet to the fire about something. And it's just a simple yes or no question. Hey, are you going to do this? Or what do you think about this? And they talk in circles about nothing and give you nothing. But they've played the political game so well that they can talk for 5 minutes and then shift the conversation over and you left with nothing. I think people are tired of that. So I don't mind how Jasmine's moving because at this point, at the same time, look at the people she's having to combat with. Lauren Boebert, right? Marjorie done finally jumped ship. But look, Marjorie, Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz. Okay. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Somebody say Graham isn't a Nazi. His Reddit post point to the contrary. The fact that we even have to have this conversation is too much for me. Nazi's too close for my liking. And I've also listened to his interviews where he was trying to explain his choices in the past and how, well, yeah, it wasn't really necessarily that. It was an era that I was in. And I was like, okay, yeah, nope, sorry. Nope, too much for me. I just don't, nope, absolutely not. Nope. Thank you, Tyler Hackner. You should look at policy instead of rhetoric. And her voting record for the most part, to me, aligns with where I stand on a lot of things. So there's that. Brandon said the other problem was that they didn't even know anything about Tallarico, but said they liked him. Like, what the F? Because nobody looked. Again, he's digestible because he's safe. And again, like he and Jasmine have very similar records on everything with where they stand politically. They're pretty much very similar. The only difference is just how they present, what it is where they stand on. So it's more like, well, which one is your type? That's kind of where I see it. But yeah, they love to do that. And especially when it comes to like white leftists and white progressives. Everybody knows what's best for everybody when it comes to black folks and what they don't want to get behind. They give us the hardest purity test when they constantly stand in the way. They will shut stuff down when they don't get their way and let everybody be collateral. Let everybody suffer for one issue. This is why I don't do that one issue voter stuff, right? They will hold on to whatever one issue that they performatively want to stand behind and then let 500 other issues affect everybody else in the negative, and then dismiss the people who are saying, listen, we're on the receiving end of a lot of BS because of y'all, and y'all are still trying to act like, nope, you guys, you don't understand. And then they'll start throwing out the terms and whatever else they want to say. And no, a lot of these folks pretty much are still white supremacists. They're just on the other side of the argument. They still stand in whiteness. They're white. These are still white people before anything else. So yeah, they want perfection. And like I said, perfection is the enemy to progress. I would rather utilize the leverage that we have with people that I know can get something done and then keep pushing that way versus I'm going to hold off until I get exactly what I'm looking for. All right. That's why some people don't ever get married, right? They probably had the opportunity to marry and find somebody that was great for them, but there were one or two things that they deemed as red flags that were just way, way too beyond what they wanted. It might have been something real small, real little, but nope, that's it. So remember when Chili was on that VH1 show, that What Chili Wants, and when she had to give the list of what she wanted in the man, she's like, oh, he got to be 6 something, he got to be Christian, he got to eat pork, he got to have this, he can't get that, he got to have this much money. Like she had like this long list of stuff. And listen, I want everybody to fight and get what it is that they want, but I think when it got down to the wire, I feel like when you have that kind of way of moving, you meet some really, really great people. But because your list is so long and almost unrealistic, because nobody's going to be perfect. Everybody's going to have something you don't like about them, or something that you would hope that could change. And then I'm always like, there's some stuff about you could probably change about yourself too, right? And I think when it comes to our political candidates, for some reason, especially as we came into the social media era, we started having this purity test, but only for like one side of the aisle. The other side gets to do whatever they want. Right. And it's weird because somebody was telling me, well, at least with Republicans, you know what you get. Democrats, we don't know. And I'm like, I hear that, but I see what Republicans are doing right now. I don't want any of that. I will blindly go the other way just to get a break from this right now. Like, that's where I'm at. And like I said, our liberation is not going to come from politicians, but you can at least utilize the leverage that you can get with some of them to get some of the things that you want as you fight for other things. But like I said, politicians are not going to give you your liberation, but they definitely will strip it away from you if you put the wrong ones in there. So, let's see. I think they're scared of Jasmine. Asha from the West said the same, in quotes, ghetto people y'all talk about are y'all comrades, long nails and all. And I do want to say too, especially even when it comes to the movement, and I told this story a million times before, I feel like everybody is always needed in every space. My thing is, if you are for the collective, I can rock with you. And it doesn't matter who you are or what it is you come from or what you have or what you don't have or how you look or what you identify as. We look, if we fighting for the same thing, let's get it. I told you the story before where one time there was a car accident outside of my window, right? There was a car that was coming out of the parking garage, and there was another car, and they hit each other, like T-bone. And the police come out there, everybody's arguing about, and I'm just watching from the window over, drinking my little juice, watching. They tore that car up. Anyway, and so they're out there arguing about whose fault it was because this person couldn't see that person couldn't see this person. The police get there, nobody knows. So the officer was about to say, well, both of y'all are at fault. And guess who solved all of it? It was the guy who was unhoused that was in the tent across the street. He was like, y'all didn't pay attention. Look, there's a car that's parked in the no parking zone. Like there was a car that was like, DC street parking. They get that sign where once you go past that sign, you can't park there. There was a car parked past the no parking sign. And because of where that car was positioned, it blocked the view for both the person coming out the garage and the person coming down the street. So neither person could see each other. And it was really the car that was the cause of the accident, not the two people driving. And that's why I always say you never know who you have in your corner. And I always say, let's not get into a space to judge people based on what we think is digestible or what is acceptable, because a lot of times we will sometimes close the door on some of the best people we'll ever meet. Like one of the things I am most grateful for is I remember even when I had the center, when Ava interviewed, one, I was like, don't do it. Like, cause I was trying to get up out of there at first. I was like, I don't know about this place. And I felt bad for her. Like, don't do it. But I remember Boss Lady was a little iffy because she was like, I don't know, this girl doesn't have a degree, which, mind you, this was just to be a program aide at the time. Like it was minimum wage job paying like $8 an hour, right? And they were giving her such a hard time, like, oh, she doesn't have a degree. And mind you, she's in college, paying her way through school and paying for her brother's school at the same time, right? But I am so glad that we were able to fight to get her in there, only for her to be probably one of the best employees they ever had. She stayed for 14 years. And then the two of us together, like we took that center to all kind of heights, right? National stages and all kind of, I love seeing some of my kids just thrive here. I will share one child with you only because now they're grown. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Every time I turn around, I keep seeing all of these cool things with my kids that just inspires me every day. Like, damn, my kids did really good. Give me 1 sec. Let me find this. Where is this at? Okay, this is... What page is this? Dang it. Okay, hold on. I gotta see where this thing is at. One of my kids goes to Syracuse right now, which was that was a church shout in itself. Damn. Oh, I think I sent it to Ava. Hold on. See, this is what happens when you be adding stuff to the live that wasn't initially in there. Okay, here we go. All right, I'm gonna share this and then give me the link. God dang it. What is the... Oh, okay, it's called Daily Orange. My bad, sorry. Okay, had to find the Instagram page. Bear with me, we're almost done here. Daily Orange. And this, the Syracuse... Give me the story, damn. Okay, we're almost here. I am so sorry, I don't like when I don't have something ready. You know what, I'll just share the screenshot from my phone. Okay. Anyway, Actually, and if you listen to the podcast, this is actually be kind of funny because this is definitely one of the kids from like some of the episodes. Okay, let me share this. So, show on Finder, open. All right. So one of my kids, now mind you, when he first started with me, he was in kindergarten, right? He's a freshman at Syracuse now, right? 8 Syracuse University freshmen started the Instagram account Syracuse Motivates to support young Black men. Each week, the group chooses a theme that revolves around academic development. Then one member speaks on it. The mission is to be together and build each other up. To achieve this, they partnered with the Alpha Phi Alpha, the oldest historically Black college fraternity, and doubled their size. It's a screenshot, so I forgot what the rest is on here. But no, this is one of my old kids. Now he's grown now. He ain't a child no more, clearly. But like, yeah. So again, getting to see like the seeds you planted thrive, and that's just one kid. Like, yeah, I can sit here and start showing off all of the ones that like I got kids doing all kind of great stuff that are now adults. And like again, all of that started with me coming from little tiny Spanaway, Washington, and Ava, who again had a high school diploma when she started with us. And they were trying to give her a hard time because, oh, she doesn't have a degree, blah, 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 and everything else like that. But you know what? Her experience and my experience together, we were able to create an environment where these kids were taught to thrive. And because she could understand what it was like to be on the receiving end of people always doubting you, and then we had a center that, again, didn't get the same kind of funding as the larger ones, we learned how to do a whole lot with nothing, right? We learned how to do everything on a grand scale. One of the things I always say in the podcast when I talk about the kids is that everything we did was always grand, no matter how small our center was. If we were hosting an event, it was going to be the biggest event in there. And one of the things I used to do with the kids, we used to turn like the center into a restaurant. Like it would be a boys versus the girls. So the boys, we would have a month, and then the girls would have a month, and you would turn the entire center into a restaurant where we cook an entire meal for everybody. We decorate. You get to put on your fancy black tie and everything, and you would have your host and your servers, and I'd be in the back, cooking and everything. Because some of the kids, you only be touching the food. You just pass the plates, right, and everything, and you put the decorations and the lights and the music and everything else like that. And I mean, you have RSVP cards, and the kids would be coming in with walkie-talkies and being brought to their seats and tablecloths, and so the kids got to experience a full restaurant experience because some of those kids had never been to a restaurant before, right? And then the next month, the girls would do the same thing, but now it's like they're in competition. So, they want to do better than what we just did. And nobody could cook like I could cook. So, Ava would really go hard too, because she actually cooks better than me. But, we would be in competition. And so everything we always did was like super, super big. Or Ava wanted to do a fashion show one day with the kids. And like we transformed that entire space. We built a runway. I brought in my professional cameras. And at the time I had like 2 kids that really were into photography. So they were the photographers. I had a kid that was in charge of like the playlist. We had entertainment, like what you call like the halftime entertainment in between the sets while the kids would go change. Somebody's coming out here doing like everything we always did was super, super grand, even though we like had pennies to rub together. That goes back to that conversational community. And so for some people from the outside looking in, they be like, I don't understand why you were in this space with these crazy little kids. Because my friends and some folks used to be like, I cannot believe you still work there. When are you going to get like a real job and make some real money? Like, because I stayed for 11 years, right? And people never understood. But for those kids, that was their world. That was everything. Even though for some people it just looked like a small little rinky-dink center for them kids, it was everything to them. It was where they learned to read. It was where they learned how to fight their battles or conflict negotiation or, and even with that being said, some of them got to meet Obama as a result of just what the center was able to do. So I always try to say that everybody's needed in the movement. You had 2 people who, I guess my experience working with kids before that would have been me being a choreographer and teaching high school teens, but you had 2 people who didn't necessarily work with children, dropped off into space, and look what we were able to create. So I never want to count out folks, because again, everybody comes from a different experience, and so that's the beauty of just, again, that idea of being in community. Like I said, how the candy lady brightens everybody's day, or the ice pops lady, same thing. Anyway, going back to the comments. Thank you, 44 Berkshire. Yeah, I was talking about Mansion out of West Virginia. Thank you for that. Maria said Trump is ghetto. Exactly. I don't even like the word ghetto, but I'll use that for him. Oh shoot, thank you. I forgot about Reba. Thank you. Jerome Powell being charged. All right, I'm gonna take it out of the title and shift the title, but just to brightly quickly touch on it. Yeah, so we see that there's an investigation into Jerome Powell, and it's centered around what they're claiming is a renovation of 2 federal buildings. And we know that deep down inside, it has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that Jerome Powell is not budging on the interest rates and is pissing off Orange Man because Orange Man needs them to go down so he can say that the economy is doing well. And we know that the economy is not doing well, to the point where, the Congressional Budget Office is no longer even releasing jobs numbers. They're not releasing a lot of things, and the numbers that are coming out are not good. 55,000 jobs in December. Ooh, that's a big number. December's supposed to be when you get that hit that 300,000 mark. But so you have that going, and they want Jerome Powell to step down. He's not going nowhere. And so, listen, I'm glad the fact that it's another old man who got more bucked than some of these folks in Congress, right? That's what that's centered on. So, they're trying to find every reason to turn this man into a criminal, do whatever, get him out of there. I will speak on it in more in-depth live. I totally forgot that I put that in the title. I'll just take it out the title and shift it to something else. But yes, Jerome Powell, hold the fort, Jerome. And in the same way they're going after Letitia James again, right? Now they're going off to communication with her and the hairdresser. I'm like, y'all are trying so hard to get everybody out of there that's in the way. That's what I said. That's the difference between the first term with Orange Man and the second. That first term, he had a lot of roadblocks because a lot of the people who maintained the guardrails were still in positions of power. And he had a lot of people on his cabinet that somewhat knew what they were doing and kind of kept him at bay, where he just couldn't go and do anything. Think back to when he wanted to shoot the protesters in the legs during the 2020 uprisings, and instead that's when he came out and held the Bible upside down. Today, that whole cabinet is a bunch of yes men, everything you want. That's why those South Park episodes are hilarious. Today is you got the just bottom of the barrel folks in charge running everything. And so anyway. Somebody said, I can't be a one-issue voter. Fascism will take away all of your rights while they're sitting on their high horse about one issue. That's what I've been saying. I understand to be passionate about something, but discernment, you got to look at the bigger picture. Look at where's this going to get us? And how does this affect what's next? Because sometimes folks will hold on to a one issue to the point where that one issue won't even be on the table anymore after a few election cycles because things have gone so far the other way. And now it's like, you sound crazy with what it is you're fighting for, right? Somebody said, it's funny, Chili is married. I don't think Chili's married. I know she's with that guy. I don't think they're married though. I don't know. We gotta look it up. Is she? Somebody can verify that. But no, when she was on that show was boring. I only watched the first 2 episodes, but she had this long list. I was like, oh, okay, Lord, man. It's a long list when the camera starts panning to different angles while you're still explaining what it is you're looking for, right? All right. Tyler said, so both ain't perfect clearly. And I think that's about the 2 candidates for Texas. And that's my point. Like, I'm fine with, again, probably either or. And listen, I'm not a Texas voter. It's going to be what Texas puts out there. But again, having that purity test for one candidate, but not the other, to me it's an issue. That's where I'm like, that ain't how this works. Let's see here. Somebody said, that's a hard call. Not only there's miseducation, but a huge crowd that lacks discerning. I'm not sure what that's about, but I agree. No, I was kidding. Let's see. Oh, well, whoever this, y'all argue with somebody. I missed whatever y'all arguing about. Okay. Somebody said, as a retired educator, I love this. Can I tell you, I miss working with the kids sometimes. Like, I really enjoyed it. I'm still connected with even the organization. Now, I told you my center is unfortunately gone. We'll cross our fingers and see what happens this year with some of the things that we're fighting for to try to change. But I still do the fundraisers and stuff, which is really nice. We helped raise $300K for kids in the DMV this December at one of the fundraisers. So that was fun. They always call me back to come and MC all the events and stuff, which is really cool. But I miss some of those moments. I will say, like, doing that podcast, sometimes I crack up when I have to go back and relive these moments. And how I remember half these stories is we take pictures of everything. So literally you know, because that podcast goes by school year, and I normally break the school year into 2 or 3 episodes. I'm literally just going through all the pictures, like, oh, that was the day that, okay, I remember that day, and then that's how I end up remembering half of what happened, because it's hard to kind of lock in and remember things year by year. It used to be easy for me up until college, but everything is kind of a blur now. So yeah. Thank you, Julian Steve. You're making an impact, Calvin. You should be proud of yourself. Pat on the back. I know, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But no, I do miss working with the kids sometimes. And the good thing is a lot of kids keep up with me. Now I have one I'd be worried about because they just joined the military. I'd be so scared. But you know, the cool thing is like with the military, you know, you have the what's it called? The Sandbox app. You can like send people like money and gift cards and letters and stuff. So I do that with one. Actually, it's from the podcast. It's Chase. If you remember the podcast, Chase is he's still an undergrad, but he also joined the reserves, and so he's at the basic training or whatever they do, and I'd be over there terrified, like, oh, I don't want any of you guys in the military right now. It's just not a good time. But yeah. Did I see that the NAACP Image Awards nominations are out? I did not. I'm behind on the award show season 2, y'all. I'm sorry. I got to catch up on some of this stuff. Somebody said, Calvin Michael, we old heads. Somebody told me I got to stop talking like an old person. They were like, you're not as old as you think you are. So you know what? Like I said, my musical age is 28. I think that's going to be my musical age as an artist. I'm going to start lying and saying I'm 28, right? Take about a decade off. So that's my musical age. But yeah, I'm fighting is that a gray? You know, I think I'm going to bed. No, I was kidding. Yeah. Well, I think that is a gray. Look at you. Look. Oh, look. Oh, God. It's bedtime. I'm gonna go cry in my room now. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, I have a few grays. I got like 5 of them in here somewhere. Anyway, okay, I can hang for like 5 more minutes, and then we're gonna get off. So get in whatever last minute questions you guys have, and then we will move on. This has been a great live. I appreciate y'all for being patient because I know I took 38 days. Like I said, I needed some time off for me, right? Somebody said I don't have gray hairs. I have strands of glitter. We'll see the real test. If I ever braid or twist this thing again, we'll see what if I got some grays or not when you start seeing them roots, right? So there's that. Let's see. I said, told you to hit me up when you're in New York. I was working. And my name is tied to so much stuff. I actually had to pull back from some stuff because I was like, you're burning yourself out. Slow down. One of the things that sucks about being a creative sometimes is when you sometimes lock in with some of these projects. Some of these projects are projects that general public is not going to see for like a year or 18 months or 2 years. And so you're putting in all this time and you feel like you're not putting out, but you're actually putting in all the work. You want to see the results. It drives you crazy. So even like when I was doing the albums, it was killing me to not be able to like put the songs out because, you want to put your stuff out. But it was like silly me decided to record 2 albums at the same time. So it was twice as long as it took to do the hardcover. And I was like, man, I want to put my music out. And you're watching your music friends drop their singles and stuff. And you got a great song, but you can't drop the single because the album's not ready and all that kind of stuff. So there's that. Calvin, who are you excited to see tour this year? There's nobody I want to see right now. I haven't heard about a lot of tours. I do know there's the Boys and Men New Edition, Tony Braxton. So maybe I'll do that one. I haven't heard about anybody else. I saw Bruno Mars is on tour. I don't know if I'll go to that, but he's an excellent singer. Actually, I might because Anderson .Paak is on that ticket. I think. Was Anderson .Paak on that ticket? I think Anderson .Paak was on that ticket. I can't remember. Who else is on tour? I don't think anybody else is on tour. Janet, do not go on tour this year. By the way, please. You have toured enough. I don't want to see you on another stage till you either got some new music or a movie or something else. I'm not coming to another greatest hits show. So don't announce any tours this year, please. Because she was talking about, it's going to be a year of surprises for 2026. It better be some music. If you say I'm going on tour again, I'm going to still be going, but I'm going to have attitude. All right. Let's see. Oh, Jill Scott, I see she has a new album out. This new song's okay. was all right, but I like Jill Scott, so I know I'll buy the album. And I saw that Mary has a residency that she just announced in Vegas. I'm probably not going to Vegas for that. I mean, I've seen Mary a few times. I don't know. We'll see. If I do that, it would be because I want to go to Vegas and maybe I'd see like multiple shows. But yeah, I'm trying to like do a little bit more traveling this year. So I'm like, some of my concert money's going to some other things. And I'm a little nervous because I'm supposed to be going to South America. And I'm like, of course, now we're doing stuff with Venezuela. So I was like, okay, I don't know about this South America trip anymore. Like, man. All right, yeah. And so, Steve Mackey did it for me this year. I didn't know he toured. I know he like coaches everybody like vocally and stuff. I didn't know he tours. That's cool. No, I'm not going to Brazil. Somebody said, "Child, I was boohooing. It's not fair. I'm just 30." Okay. Oh no, I'm supposed to be going to Uruguay in March, but I'm a little nervous about doing any traveling right now. Like, I'm not trying to. So I was like, I don't know. That's not supposed to be till March, but we'll see. Plus, I don't want to be on a plane all day. It's like 2 flights. One flight's like 5 hours, and another one's 7. I do not want to be on a plane that long. I do not like flying. I saw Morris Brown did just fire the president. I'm not sure what the reasoning was, so I have to look into that. But I did see that TSU has a surplus this year, so good job for you guys, Tennessee State. Yes, we'll see. Oh, yeah. Chili said TLC's planning their farewell tour for this year. Now, I will go to that. You know, the TLC's my group. And I told y'all one of my friends dances for them, so I'd be feeling some kind of way. Like, my friend Buddha dances for them. And I'd be like, I'd be yelling at my mom, like, you know what, Mom? Had you supported my dream, that could have been me. But instead, you were telling me that the Rapture was coming, and I couldn't even go to their concert as a child, right? But no, and they also have a theater show coming. So that I know they the theater show, I will go to that. It opens actually in DC in June. And you know, this is going to be kind of, and actually I met one of the people on the cast on that too last week, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like DC is small, everybody be knowing everybody. So I'm always back and forth between New York and DC. So everybody already knows everybody in this whole like music, theater, dance world. And so you're always running into somebody that's a part of something really cool. But I know with the TLC show, they're kind of doing similar to what was happening with The Wiz. Like The Wiz initially started out, I think, in LA. You know, they do the test run and then they do a few shows and they eventually take it to Broadway. That's, I think, what I understand is the TLC plan for their show is they're going to do like a test run here in DC and, you know, see how it tests with people. And then they kind of expand the show and then eventually take it to Broadway. So, yeah. I didn't get to go to the Kendrick show, but somebody said I'm still paying off my Kendrick tickets. LOL, I'm sitting my butt down this year. He snatched my money since the beef. And I'm not, listen, I told myself if I do any more concerts, I will not be doing the buy now, pay later, monthly. I'm going to just pay it up front because god dang it, that Cowboy Carter tour was, I was like, if I see another $80 come out of my account this month, I think like, I think my Cowboy Carter ticket was like maybe $400 or something. And so it was like 6 payments of $80-something or something a month. I was like, okay, cool. You know, you just buying it because I just needed to see and I wasn't trying to drop $400 right away. And then you be just enjoying your life and then you look and who just took it? And at the same time, I was also paying the Brand Name Monica show off. I was like, all right, you know what? No more, I'm gonna just pay them up front. And this lovely MacBook that we're on is almost paid off because I didn't know Apple let you pay monthly because I was like $1,800. And they're like, oh, well, you can do the monthly. Oh, okay. I think I got one more payment left. Then this is really mine. But I was like, what if I don't pay? Y'all gonna come and take the MacBook? I can go into hiding. Yeah. So yeah, somebody said 400. Well, I paid 400 because I wanted a good seat. Like I knew it was Beyonce. She was gonna give me a good show, so I didn't want to be in the nosebleeds. Yeah. Plus, I didn't go to the Renaissance tour, so I was like, well, I'll go to this one because I don't know if this is gonna be the last hurrah. I will. Beyonce and Janet are like the only two that I pay like big money like that for, and I'm never doing that again for either of them. To be honest, like I've seen them enough times to now comfortably sit in the 200 section with everybody else. I don't have to be on the floor anymore. Okay, it's bedtime. This has been cool. I still gotta put the timestamps on this. I'm acting like I don't gotta get up in 7 hours. All right, guys. Anyway, stay safe, stay sane, mind your business so that you can age well. Somebody said, any advice for a May Howard Master's grad? Ooh, congratulations. Advice right now, pay attention to where the job market is headed. I don't know what your program is in. But I would definitely hope that you have something locked down for your like what's next after this. Yeah, utilize the networks that are out here. DC has a bunch of amazing networks. I don't know if you're trying to stay in DC or go somewhere else or go to a different coastal city. Just be 10 steps ahead of the game. And yeah, congratulations. And also be proud of the fact that you have made it and you've gotten a master's. That's not the easiest thing to do for a lot of folks. It's a lot of work, especially if you left and go into the workforce and go back to school. It's a lot of work. So also prayers to Asha from the West. Her boyfriend's been hospitalized for 5 days because of the flu. Go and get your shots, y'all. Listen, I'm not one of them ones. I'll be right there. I'll be getting juiced up every time. Give me all the shots. Give me everything. I'm around too many people. I'm on the subway a lot and I do a lot of traveling. So nope, give me the juice. I'll be good. All right, guys, I'm out. Good night. Share your 2 cents. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Good night.